Welcome everyone to the House Committee on Judiciary and Hawaiian Affairs. It is Wednesday, February 21st, 2024. It's 2 p.m. here in conference room 325. We're here for the purposes of considering numerous measures. Appreciate everybody being here today to provide testimony. We actually all do a better job as legislators when we hear testimony from the people of Hawaii. So thank you for being here. I appreciate that. If you are testifying, I would request that you keep your testimony to 2 minutes, and I'll ask you to summarize at that point. And if you're testifying via Zoom, please keep yourself muted and your video off until you're called upon, and then again, mute yourself and turn your video off after your testimony is complete. On Zoom, if you have technical issues, you can use the chat function to communicate with our technical staff. Please don't send me a message on chat because I won't get it. If you're disconnected on Zoom, don't panic, just rejoin us and I'll try to fit you in to give your testimony when you return. If power goes out in the building here and we have to reschedule the hearing or schedule a meeting for decision making, we will certainly post suitable and appropriate notice. Please, if you're testifying on Zoom, do not use any trademarked or copyrighted images. That kicks us off of YouTube, and that's a problem. And please conduct yourself with aloha and refrain from any profanity or uncivil behavior. As you've heard me say many times, it's okay to disagree, but let's not be disagreeable. We're all in this together for the best output for Hawaii. So let's go ahead and start our hearing at the very top. First up, we have House Bill 2802, proposing an amendment to Article 1, Section 23 of the Hawaii State Constitution relating to marriage. This proposes a constitutional amendment to remove the legislature's authority to limit marriage to opposite-sex couples. We have testimony in support from the Office of the Governor, testimony in support from Congresswoman Jill Takuda, testimony in support from Mayor Blangiardi, City and County of Honolulu. Testimony in support from Councilmember Esther Kiaina. Michael Formby, also City and County of Honolulu. Tyler Dos Santos Tam. And moving on to others, we have testimony in support from Robert Baldwin, Scarlet Honolulu. Please come on up. Stand at the podium if you would, please. Let's try that again. Come on up to the podium and please introduce yourself and proceed.
Hi, Robbie Baldwin, Scarlet Honolulu, in support of House Bill 2802. At least 510 anti-LGBT bills were introduced in state legislators across the nation in 2023. Just yesterday, Justice Alito of the Supreme Court signaled they're willing to overturn the constitutional right to marriage equality. Many think these are mainland problems and don't affect us here in Hawaii. This is simply not true. In 2020, Trump got 34.3% of the statewide presidential vote. Trump won more votes in Hawaii than any other Republican presidential candidate since statehood in 1959. Members of this body have introduced anti-LGBT legislation. Anti-LGBT hate groups spoke in the rotunda just last year. At Scarlet, almost weekly, we get flyers taped to our building with messages like repent, and that we are going to rot in hell. Hawaii finds itself in a crux and needs to decide if it's going to be a leader of LGBT rights. Passing this bill is a great step in that direction. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony and support from ACLU of Hawaii. Carrie Ann Shirota, welcome. Please proceed.
Aloha Chair, Vice Chair, Committee members, Carrie Ann Shirota on behalf of the ACLU of Hawaii. We strongly support this measure, which proposes a constitutional amendment to remove the legislature's authority to limit marriage to opposite-sex couples. As we're all aware, Hawaii Constitution is very unique. We often have codified expansive rights, explicit right to privacy, the law of the splintered paddle, the aloha spirit, protection for Native Hawaiians' natural resources, and equal protection provision that has been codified. And along this continuum, we were the first state in the United States where a judge ruled in favor of same-sex couples' right to marry. We were a leader in the fight for civil rights, civil liberties, and justice. Unfortunately, Hawaii was also one of the first states to pass a constitutional amendment restricting marriage rights in 1998. That was more than 20 years ago, and it's been 10 years since the state legislature did the right thing by establishing the freedom to marry for all. Now it's time for the people of Hawaii to remedy this wrong by repealing this discriminatory language which remains in our state constitution. We've heard it said that, again, Hawaii is different. We're not at risk of other threats, but I think the reality is that we have a U.S. Supreme Court decision. Justice Thomas wrote in Dobbs that the court should reconsider a past decision codifying the fundamental right to marry, that there's an open invitation in some states to challenge the right to marry and other rights for LGBTQ persons. We need to act now. In the words of Dr. Martin Luther King, the time is always right to do what is right, and now is the time. Please pass this amendment. Mahalo.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony in support from the Change 23 Coalition. Mr. Jeff Hong. Welcome. Please proceed.
Thank you. Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. My name is Jeff Hong. I'm the chair of the Change 23 Coalition. We're in strong support of HB 2802. The Change 23 Coalition is a collection of civic organizations with a shared goal of restoring the protections of the pre-1998 Hawaii State Constitution. From the voluminous testimony, you can see that there is broad support for this measure. Our steering committee organizations include the ACLU of Hawaii, the Council of Native Hawaiian Advancement, Hawaii Health and Harm Reduction Center, the Hawaii LGBT Legacy Foundation, and Papa Ololokahi. Each of the organizations represent themselves in testimony. I'm happy to be here. 26 years ago, I was worried that truthful public testimony would be self-incriminating evidence in a court-martial. That my father's best friend, Major General Richardson, would be presiding because I chose to volunteer with the National Guard like my father and others of my family. In 1998, the voices calling for justice and equality were shouted down. It became a shouting match in the rotunda here in 2013. And today, over 80% of those polled want to change Section 23. We read in today's news of a trans youth being beaten and killed in Oklahoma, where state LGBTQ protections are sparse. We cannot give support to people who would deny us equality by pointing to our Constitution's Bill of Rights. So it's with thanks and gratitude to those from 25 years ago that we make this effort to successfully close this chapter of Hawaii's civil rights story. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Hawaii Health and Harm Reduction Center, Nikos Leverins. Welcome. Please proceed.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, and members. Nikos Leverins on behalf of Hawaii Health and Harm Reduction Center. HRC supports measures that increase opportunities for our state's sexual and gender minorities to be free from discrimination and to fully participate in civic and economic life. In this session, the legislature also has opportunities to expand access to gender-affirming care and preventative care services, including access to pre-exposure prophylaxis to prevent the transmission of HIV and to fund the state's LGBTQ+ commission. HRC serves many members of our state's trans and LGBTQ communities, including the provision of medical case management services for people living with HIV, provision of safer sex supplies, and HIV testing and linkage to care, and transgender services through our Kuana project. We also provide services for unaccompanied youth experiencing homelessness and smoking cessation services, both of which targeting the LGBTQ community. The elimination of this provision removes a vestige of discrimination that has the potential to further harm if the federal court precedent and law pivot toward the exclusion of individual rights. And just yesterday, Justice Alito indicated his ongoing concerns with the Obergefell decision. So in conjunction with Justice Thomas's concurrence in Dobbs, we're now halfway to the Supreme Court granting review to a case that could take away marriage rights. So it is really incumbent upon this body to do everything it can to protect the rights of our state's LGBTQ population And mahalo for your longstanding leadership on this issue, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Next, testimony from Rainbow Family 808. Welcome, Ms. Goliath. Please proceed.
Thank you. My name is Carolyn Martinez-Gogoyu from 808 Rainbow Family. It takes a lot for me to write these because I've written them so long. My very first one was January of 1996, down in the basement when we had so much hate in that room that I shook. I had to go up to the podium many times for some of our testifiers in support and put my arm around them just to get them through their testimony. We've come a long way, but we have not the time to stop and ponder any victory, but to go on and make sure it's complete. Cut off all the loopholes, tear them down. We can't do this without your support, and that's what we're here to ask for. As a substitute teacher, I saw the name calling. I broke up fights. In fact, one of the fights I broke up was in Waikiki when there was some homeless youth. I didn't know at the time, I didn't identify them as homeless youth. They were just some kids out there. And we were able to stop the fight, and Forrest and I, single-handedly, as we heard the sirens coming. That still happens to a degree. People are still being killed here in Hawaii, from whether if they're on base, close to a base. And I just want you to pass this bill, please. As a mother of a gay son and a friend to so many, their civil rights, and that's the reason I got into all this. When I found out that my gay son, when he came out, it was an opening. It was an absolute shock. I didn't know he was gay. I thought he was creative, intelligent, and cute, because I'm his mom. And then I looked around and saw all the rights my husband and I had, and he was denied them. And that gave me a voice. And my voice will continue until we have complete justice in our state and around our country and around the world, because Putin wants to knock them off. I've already gone through that, and so I don't want us to be in Putin's line of fire. Thank you so much for listening to me, and do the best you can.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony support from the Democratic Party of Hawaii.
Aloha Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the esteemed committee. Greetings from Hawaii Island. My name is Abby Simmons, co-chair of the Legislative Committee of the Democratic Party of Hawaii. And I'm here today to testify in strong support of HB 2802 on behalf of the Democratic Party. The party has identified this bill as a top legislative priority for this session. We are asking for your consideration in amending the bill to include language found in HB 2080, which is the comment bill sponsored by the Equality Caucus. That language states, "The right to marriage shall not be denied or abridged by the state on account of race or sex." We firmly believe this constitutional amendment is needed. It's needed to protect our fundamental human right to marry who we love, regardless of race or sex. A right that has been called into question by some members of the Supreme Court and the current state of extremist politics of division and hate. We humbly ask you to support this bill so that Hawaii may remain a beacon of hope and equality, leading the way by example. We stand on our written testimony and thank you, Chair Tarnas, for your strong allyship throughout the years. Mahalo nui loa for your consideration.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony from the Stonewall Caucus of the Democratic Party of Hawaii. Michael Golio, welcome. Please proceed.
Good afternoon. Michael Galoya Jr., Chair of the Stonewall Caucus. On behalf of the Stonewall Caucus, we want to thank you for hearing this bill. This is a long time coming for us. This has been on our to-do list for a while, but we put it to the back burner because of things like homeless youth, banning conversion therapy, and so many other queer issues that are still at the forefront. This came to we've changed it to our front burner issue for this year because of what we saw in the Dobbs decision. We need to make sure Hawaii leads again, as it was said earlier. Hawaii has not led when it comes to gay issues in quite some time. And the only way we can lead is if you amend this bill to go with the Equality Caucus's version, which actually assures that marriage equality is a right, a constitutional right, as also with regards to race. Yes, we know the Supreme Court's coming after Obergefell v. Hodges. They're also coming after Loving v. Virginia. And so that is why we're asking for the amendment today. I can go over, on a personal note, 10 years ago, the third day of the House hearings, I made one of the toughest calls I ever made in my life. And I reached out to my congressperson at the time, asking them to send in testimony. For those of us that were there, this was day 6 of what would turn into a 13-day marathon session to ask for them to submit testimony and support. We've already heard from the rest of the members of the CODEL. They were denied us. They denied me, saying that this person does not get involved with state issues. Much to my surprise this morning, I wake up to see testimony from my congresswoman without me even actually having to ask. And so what a difference, not just a day makes, but a decade makes, and every election makes. So we ask that you do the right thing. We do want the amendment, but even if you don't amend it, we can move forward because it takes us back to the original decision written by Justice Levinson, who happens to be here today. And so, which was a hallmark movement in the fight for marriage equality. But again, we're asking for the state to lead once again, not follow. And we encourage you to amend this, let's do this work, get it done, and get it out of the way so we can take care of our homeless unaccompanied minors that sit on the streets without state support, that we can take care of gender-affirming care. There are so many other things, and we're so glad to see all these people coming out for today for this issue, but we hope to see them when we come back here, as we've been here for every year for the last 23 years since our founding, to making sure that we keep the movement alive and keep moving that needle forward for everybody. Mahalo.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony and support from Friends of Civil Rights, Hawaii. Patricia McManaman on Zoom, please proceed. Okay. Well, if she comes back, just let me know. I'm going to read out the names of the organizations that sent in written testimony of support. Rainbow Family 808, North Hawaii Community Action Network, Chamber of Sustainable Commerce, Indivisible Hawaii, Pride at Work Hawaii, Drug Policy Forum of Hawaii, Hawaii State AFL-CIO, Papa Ola Lokahi, O&A Consulting, Hawaii Civil Rights Commission, Tekmana, LLC, We Are One, Incorporated, Hawaiian Ethos, Honolulu Liquor Commission, Hawaii Rainbow Chamber of Commerce, Hawaii Nurses Association, Hawaii Ports Maritime Council, Japanese American Citizens League, Honolulu Chapter. These are organizations that have sent in written testimony in support. In addition, we do have some individuals here who said they would like to testify. First up, I would like to request Justice Foley to come up. Justice Foley, oh, it's on Zoom.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. The opportunity to testify in favor of the repeal of Section 23.
Oh, thanks.
Article 1. The only provision in our Bill of Rights that was adopted to take away rights rather than to recognize or grant rights. The only provision in our state constitution designed and adopted to target and discriminate against a minority, members of the LGBTQ committee. And a provision that is now directly contrary to the United States Supreme Court ruling in Obergefell v. Hodges that ruled that statutory provisions and constitutional provisions like this violate the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment to the United States Constitution. Much has changed since Section 23 was adopted. When it was adopted, there were no same-sex marriages. Now we have same-sex marriage in all 50 states and 37 countries. When Section 23 was adopted, the Congress had enacted the Defense of Marriage Act that rejected same-sex marriage and authorized states to do the same. Now we have the Respect for Marriage Act that recognizes same-sex marriage and requires all the states to do the same. And public opinion, back in '98, 69% against is now roughly 69% for same-sex marriage. So much has changed, and I think it's time to allow the voters to revisit Section 23, to remove it from our Bill of Rights, and restore Article 1 to the glorious article that it has been. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Judge Foley. Now I can introduce Judge Levinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Vice Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Steve Levinson. As Judge Foley indicated, I authored the opinion of the court in the Bear v. Lewin matter, which was filed on Cinco de Mayo, 1993. That's a long time ago. A lot happened after that, all of it, in my view, quite sad in terms of national and local response. Article 1, Section 23, as Judge Foley indicated, is the only provision in the Hawaii Constitution, and as far as I know, in any American Constitution, depriving individuals of fundamental constitutional rights rather than conferring. The inclusion of Article 1, Section 23 in the Bill of Rights of our state constitution, I think, is an embarrassment. It would have been appropriate for the legislature to propose the repeal of Article 1, Section 23 as a companion to the passage of the Marriage Equality Act in 2013, but as a purely political matter, first things first is a valuable and important proposition. But now is the time. Let me give you a simple analogy. What if the state of Alabama were to propose a constitutional amendment which was then ratified by the electorate that would reserve to the Alabama legislature the right to reserve public education to students of the same race? Well, that's ridiculous, you might say, but you never know. It's possible that something could happen and that the good old days could return. I think the presence of Article 1, Section 23 in our Constitution is as absurd as such a ridiculous provision would be if it were inserted into the Alabama Constitution. I'm in complete agreement with virtually all of the testimony in support of the bill, and I urge the committee to pass it. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you, Justice Levinson. Let's go back to Ms. McManaman.
Thank you, Chair, members of the committee. Testifying on behalf of the Hawaii Friends of Civil Rights, we are in strong support of House Bill 2802. We do suggest, however, with the repeal, to consider introducing language similar to what that is contained in Senate Bill 3351, Senate Draft 1, which not only would remove Article 1, Section 23, but would also insert the following language, and it would prohibit discrimination against a person because of ethnicity, national origin, age, disability, or sex, including sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression, pregnancy, and pregnancy outcomes. The same arguments that this very knowledgeable body has raised today about where the U.S. Supreme Court is going and how it's going to impact Hawaii, impacts not only same-sex marriage, but also is going to impact potentially the right to abortion, abortion-related services, and the other enumerated classifications I just spoke to. So thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you very much. We have testimony in support from Sarah Milianta Laffin. Please proceed, Sarah.
Aloha, my name is Sarah Milianta Laffin. I'm a public school teacher at Alima Intermediate School in Eva Beach. You will hear many important reasons for supporting HB 2802 today, and I echo them. For my testimony, I'd like to share my experience as a Hawaii public school teacher who has directly supported over 200 LGBTQ+ students as a faculty sponsor of a GSA after-school club. Many of my LGBTQ+ students still struggle with not being able to be safely out at home or at school. Student mental health concerns have been exacerbated by the pandemic, and I always try to focus them on a future that gets better, where they can thrive and be themselves. Knowing they can get married and have normal lives gives my students so much hope. If we tell our youth that it gets better, we adults have to make sure that better is protected. If you take away one thing from my testimony, simply put, the legalization of gay marriage has saved student lives. Suicide is the second leading cause of death among adolescents between the ages of 15 to 24. Adolescents who are sexual minorities experience elevated rates of suicide attempts. A study published in the Journal of American Medical Association Pediatrics found that the implementation of marriage equality associated with a 7% drop in the number of high school students who reported suicidal ideation. For LGBT students, the drop in suicidal ideation was bigger at a 14% decrease. These decreases were enough for the researchers to say that having laws that allow same-sex marriage is linked with suicide rates, which props up other research that shows the more we accept people, the less suppressed and likely to have suicidal thoughts they are. On a personal note, I have 2 frozen embryos about 5 blocks away from the Hawaii State Capitol at the Fertility Institute of Hawaii. Yesterday, the nation woke up to learn that the Alabama Supreme Court has made a ruling that has virtually ended IVF in that state. While I know my IVF rights are safe in Hawaii, it doesn't mean it's not scary to see how quickly rights that are unprotected can be overturned. By supporting this bill, you support the future protection of marriage rights, and in so doing, support my Hawaii students in seeing a future where it will always be safe for them to be their full selves in their state. Mahalo.
Thank you very much. Next testimony in support from Roger Brannon Rodriguez. Welcome. Please proceed.
Hi, my name is Roger Brannon Rodriguez, here in support of HB 2802. 36 years ago, I appeared on Hawaii Public Radio to talk about life as an out gay teenager living in 80s Hawaii. There was no anti-bullying law back then, no discrimination protections for sexual orientation, no benefits for same-sex partners of state employees, no recognition of gay couples at all, no civil unions, no gay marriage, no Pride Month, no pride parades in Hawaii. But there were gay people here. There were gay restaurants and gay clubs and gay bars and gay boutiques, and there were gay couples, committed gay couples, living their lives together out in the open, sheltering themselves from the storms of hate and the onslaught of the HIV/AIDS epidemic. A lot has changed since then, and Hawaii has led in many ways protecting and honoring its people. It's time for Hawaii to lead once again. If the Supreme Court overturns Obergefell, there will still be gay couples. There will still be gay people falling in love and forming relationships, living together, buying homes, adopting dogs, raising children, staying up all night with sick people. The worry is that without marriage protections, there will be a return to the days when gay people were forbidden from seeing each other in the hospital simply because they weren't family members. As a gay man who lived through the dawn of the AIDS crisis, the thought of returning to those days terrifies me. Please don't let this happen to us again. It's possible that without gay marriage protections, when I die, my husband will have no say of what happens to my remains, to our shared belongings, to the sofa purchase that we agonized over, the bed that we shared, the oven that we prepared Thanksgiving dinner every year for our chosen family. These things actually happened in my community. Please protect our marriage. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony support from Kellen Perenzen.
Hello, thank you so much. Aloha Chair, Vice Chair, and committee members. I'm just here to testify in support of HB 2802. I won't take up too much of your time today. I'm just participating in this hearing to add my voice to the others here today and all of our LGBTQ community members. We have a responsibility to protect the rights of the LGBTQ community from discrimination, and never has there been a more important time for our state to protect and codify the rights of our LGBTQ community than right now with the majority conservative Supreme Court. I believe that our ohana is suffering and will continue the unnecessary steps until necessary steps are taken to ensure that no one in our community must question if their rights will be afforded to them. Aloha, thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony and support from Maki Morinoi. Not present, thank you. In addition to the ones that I've called, we have 227 individuals who submitted written testimony in support, 20 individuals who testified in opposition in writing, and 1 person who submitted comments in writing. Is there anyone else here wishing to testify on House Bill 2802? Is there anyone else on Zoom, online, wants to testify in 2802? If not, questions, members? Any questions? Any questions? I think you've got a very, you've answered all the questions.
I have a question.
Okay, of course.
Sorry.
Kanani, Representative Kanani Souza.
For one of the judges, Judge Foley,
Well, you get to pick.
and who was the other one? Judge
Foley and Justice Levinson.
Oh, Justice Levinson, if you wouldn't mind. Thank you. So basically, I just want to know, what do other states who passed a marriage equality law, is any one of them dealing with the same scenario where it's still in the Constitution and the Constitution is basically worded as such, like how ours is?
Representative Souza, I believe the answer is no. I think Hawaii is unique in that respect. I may be wrong, but I doubt it.
Okay. Yeah, I tried to do a little Google search and I couldn't seem to find anything. So just the language seems a little odd to begin with.
It's a lot better than what it might have been.
Yeah, probably agree. Thank you so much. That's all I had.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions, members?
Mr. Chairman, can I add to that?
Judge Foley,
yes,
please, go ahead.
Thank you.
Yeah, the language, Representative, was coined by me, working with the Senate Judiciary Committee to avoid an outright ban and to allow the legislature to do what it did in 2013. I know of at least one other state that has a prohibition in their state constitution, and that is California. There are a number of statutes. All of them can't be enforced. We had, I know, with interracial marriage in 1967, when the interracial marriage ban was overturned, there were 16, in Virginia, there were 16 other states. 4 were by constitutional amendment: Mississippi, South Carolina, Alabama, and Florida. And those conservative states went back to their constitution and removed that offensive prohibition, what we're asking to be done today.
Okay, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Any other questions, members? Mr. Rodriguez. Mr. Rodriguez, please come up to the podium. Representative Ganadin has a question. Please proceed.
In part,
Hi.
I just wanted to thank you for your open and honest testimony, some of the most compelling testimony that we've heard this last session, and just wonderful storytelling that you gave us. You're not a judge, to my knowledge.
No.
You're not a lawyer.
No.
How do you feel about the wording of this question? I'm going to read it to you. This is what is intended to be placed on the ballot. Shall the state constitution be amended to remove the legislature's authority to reserve marriage to opposite-sex couples? In your mind, is that clear?
Yes.
Or is that, do we need to, is there any modification we need to do? Does it feel like a double negative to you, or is it clear?
It's clear to me. Yeah.
If you're happy with it, then I suppose I'm happy with it.
Okay, that's good. Thank you, Mr. Rodriguez.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, members? And perhaps I just point out at this point that we do have the opportunity in this next election to have a voter information guide where additional language can be provided to the Office of Elections to provide additional information, just to make sure that it is clear that what this is proposing. So keep that in mind as well. Any other questions? If not, thank you all for testifying on this measure. Really appreciate it. We have other issues, other bills on this agenda, which we will move on to next. And we'll take a vote on this measure with all the other measures at the end of the agenda, just so you know. Okay, next up, House Bill 2435, relating to licensing. This measure authorizes the Director of Health to permit online access to apply for marriage and civil union licenses in lieu of in-person applications as specified in rules adopted pursuant to Chapter 91. First up, we have testimony in support from the Department of Health. Welcome. Please proceed.
Happy Aloha Wednesday. Chair Tarnas, Vice Chair from beautiful House District 34, and members of the committee. Lauren Kim, Policy Chief, Policy and Planning Officer for the Department of Health. Here in strong support for this administrative measure. Very few silver linings during a pandemic lockdown, but some people managed to find love, and through an emergency order from Governor Ige, the Department of Health was authorized to issue marriage licenses online. This has turned out to be something well within our technological capability. It was a convenience for residents and out-of-state couples alike, and we are seeking to amend statute to make this a permanent option to issue a marriage license online. This also has benefits for the neighbor islands where they might have to travel long distances, or where private agents or deputy registrars are fewer in number than on the island of Oahu. And there are about 20,000 marriage licenses issued a year, most of them, more than half of them out of state. So this just helps all couples pulling the Department of Health into the 21st century via statute change. Thank you, and I'm available for questions.
Thank you very much. And we've received 9 written testimonies in addition, and they are in opposition. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on House Bill 2435? If not, questions, members? You going to ask a question? Go ahead. Representative Ganadin.
To the department, sorry for making you stand back up. A few just basic questions. How much does a marriage license cost here in the state of Hawaii?
$60.
$60. And then you also have to go, I believe, to another office to, so can you just explain to the committee the process?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Decide to get married, get congratulations from your friends and family. You can sign up online and fill out the form online. The current process is you have to make an appointment or show up and wait in the queue to talk to an agent. That's either a civil service employee, a Department of Health employee, or a private agent that is authorized by statute, or another civil servant that's a governor's appointee, like the governor's liaison on the neighbor islands. You review the worksheet, you make sure everything is accurate, because this does get reported up to vital records and through the United States Census and the CDC. You pay your fee, you both raise your hand and say, is everything factual and correct? And you are given a license that is good for 30 days.
And this means, so this application means that in-person requirement is no longer a requirement, so you can raise your hand and do it
Correct.
via Zoom or?
Zoom, FaceTime. We've had people during the pandemic out in the parking lot in their car raising their hand, attesting to the veracity of the information they provided. So it is, our agents feel like it's doable, that we're not missing any bad actors or any couples under duress. And so this is just a convenience and I think somewhat of an expectation in 2023.
Have there been any hiccups? Have you cross-checked people's identification? Something came up different? Was somebody married to another individual? Was somebody underage? That kind of a thing.
Those issues, I don't think would be affected by online issuance. If someone is deliberately out to lie to you because they're a bigamist or they've been married in another state or continue to be married, then that marriage is null and void retrospectively. Those cases do come up, but it's very difficult unless you really want to do primary source verification. When you are signing on the dotted line, you are attesting that you are telling the truth. So if you present your South Dakota driver's license and a Hawaii driver's license, we take that prima facie as being who you are.
Okay, one last thing. Marriage is a big industry here in the state of Hawaii. So, people get married on beaches or jumping off of planes or underwater, all kinds of bizarre places, right? So, would this hinder or change the way that people request their documents from the Department of Health, especially the people performing those marriages?
Oh, not at all. So the performers, they are registered with the state of Hawaii. So we know who they are. They have to re-register every year or so to maintain that delegated authority from the Department of Health. This is just the license part. This is the application to get a license. Once the ceremony has taken place and the contracts have been signed, the marriage certificate gets sent out. The marriage certificate's a different document, and upon receipt of all the completed information from the officiant, marriage officiant, who does it online, we send out a courtesy certified copy of the marriage certificate. So this does not disrupt anything outside of what happens at the Department of Health, and in fact improves the efficiency of the department in issuing these licenses.
Thank you, Chair.
Certainly. Let me follow up on those questions. The testimony in opposition speaks to their fear that of the mishandling of marriage could cause harms to those who are underage, illegal, elderly, and handicapped. With the increase in sex trafficking of minors and other people, we must safeguard the most vulnerable. It is imperative that in-person interviews take place. How would you address those concerns? Does this bill open up any avenue for causing harm?
We do not believe so. There is no interview. It's not where did you meet, how long have you known this person. It's basically like applying for a driver's license. So there is an expectation that you are being truthful, that you don't have a fraudulent motivation when you get your driver's license. You're proving who you are. You are required to show valid identification, so you can't just print something out. It has to be, with a hologram or some sort of fraud protection. Sex trafficking is obviously an issue, but you don't have to be married to do that necessarily. We do work with agencies such as Homeland Security, Passport Agency. Sometimes marriages are used for citizenship and visa purposes, but there are systems in place with those federal agencies, and we share information. And I spent 2 years as the vital registrar, and there were a couple cases where they call and say, can you look up this couple's marriage record? Apparently, if you're from a certain country in Eurasia, there are certain red flags, and we check, and they actually sent out agents to this couple's home and did the follow-up interviews. But our function at the Department of Health for marriage licenses is ministerial. You come in, you establish your identity. Just as we've heard, it's a fundamental right to be married, so we're not trying to get in the way of that. We are, in my testimony, I did say we talked to a former our former supervisor of the marriage license office, and in her 15 years and 100,000 couples that she's processed, she has raised an eyebrow to one couple, questioning, is this being done under duress? Are you sure you want to marry? So you can never eliminate risk, but I think with the high definition fidelity and the experience of our marriage license agents, I think it's a manageable risk. One is too many, but I think some of the conveniences and benefits are what we're trying to highlight here.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other questions, members? If not, we'll move on. Thanks very much. Next, we have House Bill 2692 relating to the Mauna Kea Stewardship and Oversight Authority. This measure authorizes 2 or more members of the Mauna Kea Stewardship and Oversight Authority to meet during the transition period described in Section 195H-6 HRS regarding any matter relating to the authority's business, provided that no commitment to vote is made or sought and no decision-making action is taken. Clarifies that the authority is subject to state sovereign immunity. First up, we have testimony from Cheryl Kakazu Park, State of Hawaii Office of Information Practices. with comments. Next, we have testimony from the Office of Hawaiian Affairs. Welcome. Please introduce yourself and proceed.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. My name is Keopu Relitz. I am the Director of Advocacy for the Office of Hawaiian Affairs. You have our written testimony. We stand in opposition to this measure, in principle and practice to the authority itself. But if the authority does continue to exist, what we think is important is that it be conducted with as much sunshine and integrity as possible, and we believe that the long history of mismanagement of the mountain mandates that we have as much sunshine as possible, and that we have the ability to hold the authority, just like any other state agency, but especially in this case during the transition period, accountable through legal action. And so we do stand in opposition to this measure, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Mahalo.
Thank you very much. Mahalo. Next, we have testimony from the Mauna Kea Stewardship and Oversight Authority. Mr. John Komeiji, Chair. Welcome.
Thank you.
Please
Thank
proceed.
you. Mr. Chair, Vice Chair, and members, I'm John Komeiji, the Chair of the Mauna Kea Stewardship, and I don't like the word authority, but that's what it's called. Let me just start by saying that we understand as an authority that transparency and gaining people's trust in terms of the integrity of the organization of the authority is of utmost importance. We know that we can't do what we're going to do if the general community does not accept and understand that we're trying to do things correctly. So starting with that premise. However, on the other hand, the rules of sunshine really impede our ability to move forward. We have now we have a 3.5-year time limit in which to conduct our business. And the inability for us to meet and discuss matters individually without committing to a vote is severely impacting our ability to move forward. I'll give you an example. We want to meet with our Attorney General, right? So I want to take 2 other members with us to meet with our own attorney to find out an opinion about a certain issue. I can't remember what that issue was, but we're precluded from doing that because the 3 of us cannot meet together absent a regularly noticed meeting to meet with our own attorney to get legal advice about how to proceed. Now, there are those that say that a PIG, permitted interaction group, works. Permitted interaction groups do not work in this instance. I'm not sure if you're aware of the process, but if we have to create a permitted interaction group, that happens in 1 meeting. We then do an investigation. We have to come back at our next regularly scheduled meeting, which is 1 month later, have a report. You're not allowed to ask any questions or discuss the matters of the investigation. And then you can come back to the 3rd month for a meeting to then discuss and ask questions about the report and further discuss the opinion. So let's say that we want to meet with our attorney. I got to create a PIG who then has to go and report what they found 1 month later. We cannot ask any questions to clarify what that report is until the next meeting, so it takes us 3 months for us to do things. So in essence, what we're trying to do is being able, we understand the harm that if we're not transparent in terms of decision-making. We believe that we will be transparent and explain to the public or any other individual why we're voting the way we are. We're not going to come in and say, here, just take a vote and not have any explanation. But to hamper us in terms of our daily business, and we have no employees. We have 1 employee right now. We have no employees, so we have a working group. Our working authority members draft job descriptions, draft consultants agreements, have to hire an executive assistant, and the inability to talk by and among ourselves in this work atmosphere with more than 1 other authority member at a time, again, severely hampers what we're trying to do. So having said that, I'll stand on the rest of our testimony, and I'll be willing to answer any questions that the chair or other members might have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony in opposition from the Public First Law Center. Ben Krebs.
Good afternoon, Chair.
Oh, there you are in
Members of
person.
the committee, Ben Krebs for the Public First Law Center. Stewardship of Mauna Kea is clearly an issue of great public interest. We support the practice of ho'oponopono, but that practice can and should coexist within the confines of the Sunshine Law. This bill creates a huge exception to the Sunshine Law that would allow any and all board business to be conducted behind closed doors. We do support, more narrowly tailored solutions, and that's something that, we'd have to see in further drafts, but as written, this is an extremely broad exception. And this would only further erode trust in government and the work of the authority, so we respectfully oppose this measure. Available for questions.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony in opposition from KAHEA, the Hawaii Environmental Alliance. Bianca Isaki, please proceed.
Aloha. Thank you. Aloha, Chair and Representatives. I'm Bianca Isaki here on behalf of KAHEA. We're a nonprofit. We were established in 2000, and we've been advocating for Mauna Kea protections for almost as long. Like OHA, we're asking you to oppose HB 2692 because it exempts the authority during the critical 5-year transition period away from university management. We do appreciate the intent of the bill is to facilitate the work of the authority with their members to meet the transition deadline. So the answer is, though, to better support the authority to, by amongst other things, enlarging the transition period and not to compromise the open process of deliberation. It's been said many times, community moves at the speed of trust. And if it takes longer to conduct authority business in open meetings, that's just how long it takes. Allowing boards with difficult missions this exemption sets really bad precedent. And as the Public First Law Center just said, the bill says the exemption is about the authority conducting ho'oponopono between individual members, but the exemption is not limited to ho'oponopono, and there's no way to enforce any such limitation. Also, members are only appointed for 3 years, so it may be that they resolve their disputes in private, but that's at the cost of eroding public trust. We did submit written testimony with further argument. I didn't see on the website, but I guess it'll come later. Thank you for your time and any questions.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony in opposition from Laulani Teal. Welcome. Please proceed.
Aloha, Chair and members. Mahalo for this opportunity to testify. I am a Hawaiian cultural practitioner of Ho'oponopono. I'm the coordinator of Ho'oponopono Peace Project, which was formerly the NHLC NHBA Peace Project, which has done Ho'oponopono in the community for many, many years. And I've worked with most of the practitioners of Ho'oponopono throughout Hawaii, most of the elder practitioners. And I feel reasonably safe in saying that no one that I know would say that the application of the term Ho'oponopono in this context is appropriate. It is not appropriate. And the bill is also not appropriate. That is by itself. And then are some very, very serious concerns about the way that it is used in the greater context in which this exists. Now, if there were Ho'oponopono that needed to happen between members of the advisory council or between them and the public, I believe that that is covered under the current mediation statute. However, it is being misapplied. This is an article that was published by the National Observatory of Japan on January 5th, in which its director, Saku Tsuneta, basically said that Ho'oponopono, and he used the word Ho'oponopono, is being conducted in our community for the purpose of furthering the 30-meter telescope. He says that the 30-meter telescope must and will be built, and that Ho'oponopono is a crucial means to do this. Now, Are these related? I cannot say for absolute certain, but certainly with this context and with the published timeline of the 30-meter telescope that specifically says that they intend to begin construction in April of 2026, even though their lease expires in 2033, which is before they would be able to complete construction, that this Ho'oponopono process is the crucial process that they are using in order to soften the community so that they can build a telescope that does not meet free, prior, and informed consent of the indigenous peoples who have clearly and very specifically said, A'ole, no TMT. So I just want to say that under the circumstances, without judging anyone's intent, it is culturally inappropriate to pass this measure, and I ask that you please hold it. Mahalo.
Thank you very much. We've received written testimony in opposition and support from League of Women Voters and 5 other individuals. Anyone else wishing to testify on this measure, HB 2692? Somebody else? If I may first, I'm going to have the person on Zoom first, and then I'll come to you. Is it this person?
Yes, aloha.
Noe Wong Wilson, please proceed.
Aloha, Chair Tarnas and committee members. My name is Noe Wong Wilson. I am Vice Chair of Mauna Kea Stewardship and Oversight Authority, so I have submitted written testimony, and I wanted to be here to also support the testimony of John Komeiji and to emphasize how difficult it has been for us to really just do the normal business that is required of us as members of the authority. I will also mention that there are a number of us community members who serve on the authority, and I don't intend to speak on their behalf. But I will say that we are very concerned about the issues that are being brought forth today, that community information, community involvement, and feedback is extremely critical to the work of the authority, and that trust must be there in order for any of our intended work to be accomplished. So, having said that, we have been struggling as to how to accomplish that, given that we only meet for 2 hours once a month, and everything has to be agendized a week ahead of time, and we have not had the opportunity to have full and robust communication amongst our members about how we engage our community. So given that we have no staff, and we have had to, each of us, contribute an inordinate amount of work and hours toward this authority in order to just barely get it off the ground, we were looking for an opportunity that it would give us the ability to work together to move in positive ways in a faster fashion. So one thing that we have finally achieved is in March, I believe on the 13th of March, we will begin our community meetings, our public meetings in Hilo, and that is just currently being announced, where we have an opportunity to sit with community on Zoom or in person to actually share with people what we're trying to achieve, where we are in the process, and what our next steps might be, and then get direct feedback. So although our monthly meetings are open to the public, we get very little participation. Maybe one or two members of the public might come to our meeting. They don't have much to say. We don't get people attending on Zoom, or if they do, there's no testimony. And so we're moving along in somewhat of a vacuum, and we're hoping that by setting up these community meetings in the future on a regular basis across the island, we'll be able to have that opportunity to engage with community, both by sharing what we're doing and providing opportunities for input. So I just say that the reason we submitted this bill on behalf of the authority is to allow us to work a little bit more efficiently and with the ability to speak to each other without, I guess, without causing strife for our communities. We come from the community, and we have been a very big part of the history of what's happened on the Mauna, so we're very cognizant of that. I do understand the points that some of my friends and community members have made, and so we leave it to you, of course, in your wisdom to decide if there is additional language that could be brought in that could narrow it a little bit more so that it provides public a little bit more comfort.
Thank you.
But I appreciate that. Appreciate the testimony. Thank you. And then there's that other part I wanted to make sure that we didn't miss, and that was the other part of the bill, which clarifies the sovereign immunity.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Testimony from within the room. Yes, please. Mr. Osorio, Professor Osorio, please come on up and testify. One at a time first, yeah.
Good afternoon, Chair Thomas, Vice Chair Takayama, and members of the House Judiciary and Hawaiian Affairs Committee. My name is Jonathan K. Kamakaviva Ole Osorio, and while I'm an employee of the University of Hawaii, I'm not representing them today. I'm representing myself and also Kahea, on which board I serve. I am a person who was born and reared in Hilo, in Waiakea and Keaukaha. So our lands are fed by the waters of that mountain. And so I have an interest in this, in the place and in the future of Mauna Kea. I was also a plaintiff in a lawsuit against the state of Hawaii in 1994, challenging the state's use and sale of Crown and government lands, also known as ceded lands. That case went to the Supreme Court and was rendered an excellent decision in 2011 that acknowledged the vested rights of Native Hawaiians on ceded lands. As I understand the purpose of this bill, it is to facilitate the gathering of information from Native and perhaps from non-Native parties in order to develop and initiate a management plan for the Mauna Kea Summit. I do object first to the insistence that this can be considered ho'oponopono, and second to the argument that this process must be hurried in order that this can be completed within 5 years, or 3.5 years, I guess is what we have left. These two arguments are actually incompatible with one another. If there is actual ho'oponopono, the length of time required is always conditioned to the family undergoing the process, and it could take days, months, or years. It's not possible to imagine this process being used on a room full of individuals. If it was, it would be something very different from ho'oponopono. I must respectfully disagree with my friend and colleague Noinoe Wilson in opposing this bill. While I appreciate the difficulty of creating this management plan in diligent, credible, and trusted collaboration with residents in Kanaka, but if that is the task that needs to be done, then it needs to take as long as it needs to take. If it means that the summit cannot be managed until this plan is completed, then the authority is badly constructed, which I think is what we're actually hearing from the people who are proponents of this bill. They have no staff, or they have one staff member. They are subject to rules of engagement that make it difficult for them to collaborate and to get information from the public. That is not going to be fixed by a new bill that creates distrust, mistrust among the people that they're trying to reach. I really urge you to look closely at how badly designed this is and go back and figure out how the authority can actually be constructed to do the job it was entrusted to do. Mahalo nui.
Mahalo. Next, we have testimony from the back. Yes, please. Ma'am, with the striped shirt, yes. Please introduce yourself and proceed.
My name is Karen Murray, and I didn't even know this was happening until like about half an hour ago. And I just lost the person most dearest to me on this world on Saturday. But this is important for me to be here and at least witness. But I'm sorry if I can't address the speakers who said the items that I wanted to address because I wasn't fast enough to catch their names. But I just feel like what I'm hearing circumvents two very important things that people worked really hard on, the sunshine laws. They came out of a time when people felt there was such a need, and I think it's even more necessary now because everybody's working very hard, and things happen on Zoom and are excluding people, and it's a very inclusive kind of, clique that gets to even hear that these things are happening. And the opposition to the TMT was very clear. It was very clear. We saw the people come out to Mauna Kea. We saw people fired from their jobs for supporting the opposition to Mauna Kea. So I think those are two very important things that this is exempting all of the sunshine laws and everything is going to, it's like telling the people they don't matter. Yeah? It's like saying all the work they put into these things don't matter. And a lot of people who assume that the sunshine laws will still be in play will not hear that they're being circumvented, and they will not have a chance to speak out against that. The other thing is, someone said about they're working in a vacuum. Well, in the old days, in a lot of indigenous cultures, the way to deal with people who deviate from laws was to shun them. And so, instinctually, a lot of people just turn their backs. It's like a deep cultural reaction. Yeah. So I think it's no wonder that you're not getting very much of response, and certainly not sitting through a Zoom meeting, which most people, it's totally exclusive of people who don't have computers, who don't have time because they're supporting their kids and working 3 jobs, 2 jobs, right? And not to mention the fact that there's only 1 staff member. You have to go slow if you only have 1 staff member. Poor thing is going to, that whoever that person is going to just have too much on their plate if you go too fast for that person. So there's a lot of different things, but from what I see in this room, it's just a way to, and I think things can happen, like as John Osorio said, the system, the structure can be adjusted to accommodate everything, sunshine laws, everything. There's ways to do things, but to circumvent important things that people worked very hard for, and assume that are in place to protect them in a closed room is not pono. So when you talk about ho'oponopono, it goes against ho'oponopono.
Thank you very much. Anyone else in the room wishing to testify on this measure? If not, questions, members?
I have a question.
Representative
For,
Souza.
Noe Wong Wilson, please. She's still on.
Yep, there she is.
Oh.
Yeah.
Aloha, thank you for testifying. I just have a question regarding the intent of the bill. You know, I think that from my perspective, this bill reads as a cultural sort of thing where we're utilizing ho'oponopono as a means of bypassing the Sunshine Law in some sense. The bill reads as if ho'oponopono is supposed to be between the board members and community stakeholders and the outside. But it seemed like a few people mentioned that there needs to be ho'oponopono between the board members or the members on the oversight authority. Is that a true statement? Or I'm just a little confused as to who is the ho'oponopono between.
So, let me try to explain. In the use of the term ho'oponopono, and with all deference to the previous testifiers, our approach to the use of ho'oponopono is not the full use within the family context, which is described in Mary Kavina Pukui or in other trainings. And I too have been trained by Auntie Ulu Garman in the practice of ho'oponopono within the family. What we do when we created this authority at the very beginning, and we were first tasked with creating rules of our organization, you know, how we elect officers or how often we meet and whether we use Zoom technology or others. So our rules of organization, we opted to rely on the cultural, the three cultural rules or cultural principles that were included in the Act, in Act 255, which guides us as an entity in how we act with each other, how we make our decisions, how we proceed. So it's unlike any other board or commission that I've ever participated on. And so even in our daily rules of order, we do not use Robert's rules, only as a last resort if we are unable to reach consensus. And we try to operate from a perspective of our Hawaiian culture, although not all of us are Hawaiian by birth or by blood, but that we practice using Hawaiian principles. And so when we talk about ho'oponopono, we're talking about how to address issues that are difficult, that have to be addressed by all of the members in a way that isn't restrictive through the Western model of Robert's rules and voting, yes or no, and so franchising some and defranchising others. But how we can gain perspective through educating each other, to working together, to identifying issues, sometimes leaving those issues on the side to be addressed later, and then moving forward with those pieces that we can agree on. And it sounds odd to those who are not used to working in consensus fashion, but this is how we approach the work in the authority in all of the committees we do. So we will record votes for the purposes of legal recording, but in general, we try to just seek consensus amongst our members and make sure that we address disagreements or issues maybe where not everybody feels comfortable with until we can find that comfort and find those areas where we all agree in. So basically,
thank you. You
that's
answered my
what
question. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Mahalo.
Thank you. Other questions, members? If not, thank you very much to the testifiers. We're going to move on to the next measure. House Bill 1527 relating to veterinary medicine. This prohibits animal owners and their employees from performing any surgical procedures on the owner's animals and prohibits, it provides a violation of the prohibition as a Class C felony and clarifies that the offense of cruelty to animals in the first degree does not apply to accepted veterinary practices and cropping or docking as customarily practiced when the procedures are performed by a licensed veterinarian. First up, we have testimony from the Hawaii Department of Agriculture.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, committee members. Dexter Kishida, Deputy at Hawaii Department of Agriculture. The department respectfully opposes the current version of the bill. The current version could construe accepted practices in current livestock management as part of this. So we're requesting that the general animal or animals be more specific. I believe, or our understanding is that the real intention is around dogs. So being very specific around the intention of the animal so that our ranchers aren't inadvertently affected by this bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up, we have testimony in opposition from Melilani Oshiro. And then we have testimony in support from Animal Welfare Institute. Ms. Gibson, please proceed.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, committee members. Inga Gibson on behalf of Animal Welfare Institute. In strong support, I just wanted to mention this would close an existing loophole in our animal cruelty law that has unfortunately been on the books for decades, that essentially allows any person, non-veterinarian, to perform ear croppings, dockings. The Humane Society can testify to a number of the most horrific, egregious cases where we see these backyard surgical procedures happening, and amazingly, this has been a loophole. So this bill is essential in closing that loophole. I did reach out to Sharon Hurd and HVMA and UH Research folks, and we appreciate their concerns. We note that the bill does apply to pet animals. However, I believe it needs a technical amendment so that the entirety of Section 2 actually applies just to pet animals. I believe that would address their concerns. Also, one other amendment that I put in our written testimony is, as written, it only would prohibit the owner or owner's employees of the pet animal from performing the surgery. And obviously, we want this to apply to any person, and actually those are the cases we've seen where people have performed these surgical procedures, non-veterinarians without access to any pain medication, analgesic, antibiotics, doing it for their neighbors and their friends' pets because it's less expensive than a veterinarian. So we would just hope that it's expanded to any pet animal, not just the owner or the owner's pet animal. Mahalo.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony in support from the Hawaiian Humane Society.
Hi, Chair Tarnas, Vice Chair Takayama, committee members, Stephanie Kendrick from the Hawaiian Humane Society. We're in strong support of this measure. The existence of this loophole results in animals coming into our shelters on a regular basis that have been mutilated by these amateur surgeries. The measure was never intended to apply to livestock. We thought we had that language right going into it, but we are happy to make any amendments necessary to clarify that this is supposed to apply exclusively to pet animals. Customary livestock practices should not be affected by this measure, and we're happy to work with other stakeholders to make sure that that's clear. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony with comments from the Hawaii Board of Veterinary Medicine. In person.
There were some technical difficulties getting me up. My name's Carrie Shahan. I'm the Executive Officer of the Hawaii Board of Veterinary Medicine. Thank you, Chair and members of the committee, for this opportunity to testify. The board is in support of the spirit of this amendment and takes under consideration the comments that were made concerning livestock management. The board would also suggest that tail docking in neonatal puppies does not appear to have any negative complications, and would like that section to be removed, tail docking removed in its entirety, or to be changed to tail docking or amputation of adult dogs. The board also recommends that the language concerning misdemeanors be updated to be commensurate with Chapter 706 to update the maximum fine from $500 to $1,000 and the maximum length of imprisonment from 6 months to 1 year. and that the penalties for felonies appears to negatively affect only the animal's owners or their employees and not any person engaging in surgery without the veterinary license. If the committee feels like they would like to move forward, the board does prefer the language in the Senate Bill 2562. Thank you for this opportunity.
Certainly, thank you very much. Next, we have testimony in opposition from the Hawaii Cattlemen's Council. Please proceed. Nicole Galassi.
Thank you, Chair Tarnas, Vice Chair Takayama, members of the committees. I'm Nicole Galassi on behalf of the Hawaii Cattlemen's Council. We submitted testimony in opposition to this bill due to that concern that this will prevent ranchers from performing necessary procedures on their livestock and then deeming it a felony. Ranchers are competent at these procedures and they do need to be able to continue to perform them. We understand that this is really targeted at pet animals, so we respectfully ask that there is clarification in the language so that it can't be misconstrued that this applies to livestock as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony with comments from the Hawaii Veterinary Medical Association. Jill Yoshi-Seido, not available here. Okay. And then we have testimony from numerous individuals and organizations, some in support, some in opposition. Total number 31 in support, 13 in opposition, 3 with comments from all the testifiers. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on this measure, 1527? First up, this, please. Please introduce yourself and proceed.
My name is Chantel Moniz. I'm president of Hina's Legacy Rescue Foundation. We do animal cruelty rallies every month. There's a lot of animal cruelty going on, but in respect to this bill, I do have one picture that I have with me, and I didn't realize that I should have brought more, but if you notice, his ears has been cropped and it's been overcropped. So if this happened in a vet or in a place that was licensed to do it, it wouldn't have happened that way. There's a lot of things that's going on with him, and I'll use him in the next bill as well. But I strongly support this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. And if you please provide your name to our staff here so we can make sure we get it properly.
Chantel Moniz.
Chantel Moniz. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Next, anyone else wishing to testify on this measure? Please come on up, introduce yourself, proceed.
Aloha, Angela Melody Young on behalf of ROAR, Rescue of Animal Rights. We rescue kittens and provide trap and neuter services and medical care to various creatures. And so cruelty can occur in a lot of ways, and cruelty due to cockfighting is a cultural practice, so it can be culturally passed on from one culture to another. And cruelty can be experimenting on animals. For example, in a few countries, you can conduct cruel experiments on animals, and it's legal. And so in this
House
measure,
Bill 1527.
Yes. The cruelty is that the surgical procedures are animal cruelty. So this is a good policy because it tells the public what constitutes as animal cruelty in terms of surgical medical practices. And although we're not talking about science experiment animals, I'm going to set an example about the federal law, the Animal Welfare Act, which is a federal regulation to set the parameters to animal welfare. And so from this example, federal law that I'm going to read to you from, you can get an idea of why it's important to set health and safety standards in Hawaii state law about medical practices and cruel surgeries. The Animal Welfare Act was signed into law on August 24th, 1966. It is the only federal law in the United States which regulates the treatment of animals in research, teaching, testing, exhibition, transport, and for dealers. The Animal Welfare Act sets a limit to the treatment of animals for dealers to protect the dealer's trade and the living creatures. And the Animal Welfare Act requires that minimum standards for care and treatment be provided for certain animals bred for commercial sale and for research, teaching, or testing and transportation of the animals commercially or exhibition of the animals to the public. So the act is enforced by USDA, the Animal Plant Health Inspection Service branch.
Ms. Young, if you could focus your comments on the bill and summarize, that'd be great.
Yes. So the Hawaii state law, when it comes to the pet industry and animal medical care, it's very loosely managed. So there should be some consideration to look to the standards set within the federal act when legislating the parameters for cruel surgeries and medical practices. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on this measure? Please come on up, introduce yourself.
Hi, Tiffany Kim. I'm president of For Angel Foundation, but I'm here as just a normal citizen. I just wanted to give my support in support of this bill. You know, we do run a dog rescue, and so of course, we do work with a lot of pets, and we have seen cases of backyard medical procedures that have gone awry, and so we just want to give our support of this bill.
Thank you. If you could provide your name again, was it?
Tiffany Kim.
Okay, thank you very much. Anyone else wishing to testify on this measure? If not, questions, members? Seeing none, we'll move on. Thank you very much to the testifiers. Let's go on to the next measure, which is House Bill 1580 relating to animal cruelty. This amends the criminal penalties for various animal cruelty offenses by increasing the category of offense. On this measure, we have testimony and support from the Department of Law Enforcement. Next, we have testimony in opposition from the Office of the Public Defender.
Good afternoon, Chair Tarnas, Vice Chair
Good afternoon,
Takayama.
Mr. Bento.
William Bento, Deputy Public Defender. First of all, I just want to say the Public Defender's Office is not in opposition to any measure that hopes to help animals or stop animal cruelty. However, we do have some concerns regarding this bill. First of all, the increase in penalties in general creates several ripple effects. First of all, it will increase the bail for somebody that's charged with these offenses. That will lead to further pretrial incarceration. I believe that this committee is hearing 4 bills tomorrow on the agenda dealing with criminal justice reform, and one of the main problems is pretrial detention. Furthermore, more people will want to litigate these cases because of the fact that the penalties are so strict. That will cause a stress on the court system. The deputy attorney generals that have to litigate these cases, deputy prosecuting attorneys, and I'd be remiss if I didn't say a stress on the deputy public defenders and our office statewide that would have to deal with these cases. But probably most importantly, it will probably lead to a greater amount of people being incarcerated. And that will put a tremendous stress on our already overburdened prison system. So much so that, as the committee knows, we rent space on the mainland for some of the people that are being housed in our prisons. There really is no deterrent effect to increasing the penalties. The only thing that creates deterrence is a change in attitude. And so I would submit to the committee that we try to work with other members of the community to help change the attitude that people have in regards to our animals and our pets. And, a change in attitude in the community helps the community to then help law enforcement to enforce the current laws that we already have. So thank you very much, and I'll be open to any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bento. Next, we have testimony and support from Animal Welfare Institute.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, committee members, Inga Gibson, Animal Welfare Institute. We weren't involved in the initial drafting of this measure, so we, along with the Hawaiian Humane Society, have submitted some suggested amendments. We do actually agree that some lower level offenses, such as The existing misdemeanor under 711, 1109 should remain. There are those cases where animal control officers should be able to continue to use their discretion when it's an issue of an omission versus a commission, when it's a case of neglect versus a case of intentional egregious animal cruelty. We also did recommend removing the penalties for a few other sections that we believe are not necessary because it has to do with interference rather than direct injury or death of an animal. We did also recommend that any changes that are made to 711, 1109.5 are consistent to increase penalties if it results in the death of an animal. So obviously that, we're talking about much higher level cases. I did also want to say that regardless of how you feel about it, our jails are not full of animal cruelty offenders. Our jails are full of low-level drug offenders, most often Native Hawaiians and other Indigenous peoples. So I appreciate the public defender, but there are a lot more issues going on needing criminal justice reform. We hope that this would serve as an additional strong deterrent. Hawaiian Humane and Harold Hand can talk about the very few cases that actually make it to prosecution. Right now, a lot of judges are just giving, $50, $100 fines, and these folks are back there. So we believe that some of the provisions in this bill warrant strengthening, but not necessarily all of them. So happy to work with the committee and appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony from Hina's Legacy Rescue Foundation, Chantel Moniz. Welcome back.
Ooh, I wish I had more than 2 minutes, but I don't. Okay, so let me try and sum it all up. I am in support of the bill. I do believe that the penalty should be increased a lot more. And as Inga stated, our prison system is not full of animal cruelty offenders. It's way more than that. It's a lot more than that. I have a number of pictures I can show you. This is animal cruelty. He couldn't walk. He was severely beaten for years, and he ended up like this. This is Giovanni. He's a little dog, this small. He was beaten by a homeless person, and it was shown on camera, but Honolulu Community College wouldn't release those films. Anyway, he was beaten by a human being, and his trauma was so severe, it was consistent of a vehicle hit. So that's how bad he was swung. He was beaten in his head. His head was swollen. His blood vessels was burst. Here's another one. People dumping dogs that's already dead in their crate. Their body is embedded into the crate. Animal cruelty. This should be a case where somebody goes to prison. Noah was killed, tortured, hung over a bridge. He was a little dog, very harmless, didn't even bother anybody in the community. Nakoa, let me show you Nakoa. Nakoa was shot with a 9mm gun. You want to know why? Because he was in the premises of cockfighting. So anybody with chicken fight or that hold rallies for chicken fights, or anybody that has fighting chickens, that has dogs that come around, this is what happens. This is what they do to it. His spine was severely severed. He couldn't walk. The only thing that could move was his eyes. He couldn't eat. He couldn't drink. So yes, this requires punishment. This is Baby Bub. He was slashed by a machete, by somebody that just walked right past him and decided he wanted to slash him in the moment. Animal cruelty. Here's Sir Clyde again. Look at his nails. He was emaciated. He was also a case that they thought that he was part of sexual abuse. We have another one, Emma. She was, and I don't have her picture, she was severely sexually abused almost all her life, and she was rescued. And today, she's thriving. But people like that deserve to go to prison. I support this bill, but I want harsher punishments. We all do. The penalties need to increase. So as much as the public defender, wants to say that it's going to increase our prison system, it should. It should, because somebody should be held accountable. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have testimony from the Hawaiian Humane Society.
I hope that was hard to hear for everyone. Stephanie Kendrick from the Hawaiian Humane Society, Chair Tarnas, Vice Chair Takayama, and committee members. The reality is animal cruelty is an exceptionally difficult crime to bring to trial. It tends to take place behind closed doors. The abusers are often the only witnesses, know the abusers, and many of them are afraid of them. And there's reason for that. There's an extremely high correlation that's been proven over more than 40 years of research between animal crimes and crimes of violence against human beings. So when we get a case that we actually have evidence and witnesses that we can take to trial, that we can take to the prosecutors, that will give them enough to go to court, the penalties should fit the crime, and only the most egregious crimes are going to court at all. And with respect to the Defender's Office, I do understand that we need prison reform in this state, and that people are being incarcerated who shouldn't be incarcerated, but that is not the case with these offenses. It's extremely rare for anyone who abuses even multiple animals, scores of animals, resulting in deaths, to get any kind of prison time at all. And I'll let Harold elaborate on that, as he is our expert in animal crimes. But this is a really important measure. We have suggested some amendments because we didn't agree with the across-the-board approach of just raising all of the penalties. There are some cases where we need to have a misdemeanor option for, as Inga mentioned, crimes of omission rather than commission. So we would appreciate those amendments being taken into consideration. But with that, we would love to see you guys move this bill forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony from Mara Hansen. Next, we have testimony from Kathy Matsuno. Next testimony, these are in support, testimony in support from Vivi Franson. Thank you. Next testimony in support from Gloria Kwan on Zoom. Please proceed.
Hi, thank you. Thank you to the chair, vice chair, and the entire committee. My name is Gloria Kwan, and I represent no organization. I'm testifying in favor for this bill. I'm in support of this bill to ensure the safety of our community. I think it's imperative that misdemeanor charges relative to animal cruelty be lifted to Class A, B, and C felonies. Society must not lose sight that these behaviors are at-risk behaviors and are indicators that predict future harm committed on human beings. A concern I have is in regards to Section 8A of the bill. It says a sexual assault of an animal will be a Class C on the first offense. This could and should be reconsidered as the first offense of sexual assault on an animal, which should be a Class B felony. This is because it could be telling society and defendants that mutilating an animal would bear a harsher sentence than sexually assaulting an animal. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you very much. We have, in addition to those who have already testified, who said they were testifying, we have 27 additional testimonies in writing in support, 2 additional testimonies in opposition, and 1 written testimony with comments. Is there anyone else here wishing to testify on this measure? Oh, excuse me, we got 1 here, and then to you, and then to you. Please, come on up and introduce yourself. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chairperson and Vice Chair and committee members. I am Harold Hahn Jr. I'm a Senior Field Operations Manager for the Hawaiian Humane Society. I've been in animal welfare for over 8 years and a Honolulu police officer for over 15. I certainly support this bill as it strengthens certain penalties for animal cruelty, which we see on a daily basis. I certainly understand everyone's points made today and certainly understand where they're coming from, against or for. I just want to give a couple of examples. So James Montgomery in 2006 had over 150 dogs in a puppy mill living in horrendous conditions. Not having a criminal background, he was allowed to plead no contest and serve 5 years probation. After that, we subsequently, with help from others, introduced a felony level portion to the animal cruelty misdemeanor. So if it affects more than 10 animals, it becomes a C felony. Fast forward to 2016, Mr. Montgomery was again charged with animal cruelty by throwing 2 dogs in his trash can and having over 33 animals in a closed concrete bunker with no air, no ventilation, found deceased bodies in there of animals, covered in feces and urine, and we rescued all those animals. He got charged with animal cruelty, served 9 months in prison, but is now off probation and is able to own animals again. So that's an example where the legislation, we raised the bar, and it did work for prison time, right? But we still have some work to do. Just recently, I currently have 1 sheriff's case and 5 Honolulu Police Department cases of animal cruelty, misdemeanor, where people are witnessed by the law enforcement officer dragging the dogs, slamming them to the ground on leashes, kicking them, stomping them, choking them, hanging them. And the courts do not seem to recognize that as animal cruelty because, be that as it may, they may not show injury at the time. Dogs are very resilient. They tend to look at only very serious injury, but those dogs are sentient beings. They suffer, they feel stress, anxiety, emotional stress. So that alone, to me, should be considered, animal cruelty and taken more seriously because it's very sad when you see these animals. I have a case going tomorrow. Nohoi is so afraid and so timid and shaking, can't even be socialized or handled because his owner beats him, and he's going to trial tomorrow. And it's really sad when you see these things, and it's something we really need to take a stand on. Since I've been there for 8 years, there's only 2 cases where people have served any jail time. So we have more cases than that, but normally they get probation. We also had a severe case of animal desertion where a pet owner was walking her 2 dogs on Kaina Point Trail. They went over the cliff. She made no effort to rescue them. 1 deceased at the scene later that afternoon. 1 had to be euthanized. We finally located her at 6 p.m. The accident happened at 10 a.m. in the morning. I read her Miranda rights. She admitted to doing it. We charged her with animal cruelty, 2 counts, animal desertion, 2 counts, because 1 perished. The judge gave her 48 hours of community service at the Hawaiian Humane Society and a $450 fine. So that's totally unacceptable to me. And I'm sorry I get emotional about it, but it's hard things we see every day. And if we don't speak for the animals, then it's very hard, like Stephanie Kendrick said, to prosecute these cases because you don't have an actual victim witness. You have to kind of glean it through the eye of the animal. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Next testifier here, this gentleman. Yep, thank you. Please introduce yourself and proceed.
Yes, hi, good afternoon, Chair Tarnas and committee members. My name is Brian Mick. I'm here on behalf of the Disability and Communication Access Board and our Executive Director, Kirby Shaw. Apologies for not getting in any written testimony, but we are in support of this bill, specifically in Section 5, which would raise the offense of causing injury or death to a service animal or law enforcement animal from a Class B or from a Class C to Class B felony. We would note that in case of a service animal, not only is pain being inflicted upon the animal, you're now potentially creating a barrier for the person with the disability who no longer can rely on that animal to be their service animal, so they may no longer be able to continue with their employment or be able to participate in normal public life. So we're in support of the bill. Thank you.
Thank you. And if you could submit written testimony, that'd be great.
Sure.
That'd be great. Thank you very much. Ms. Young, you want to testify? If you could focus your comments on the bill itself, that'd be great.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, and the committee. Angela Melody Young testifying on behalf of Roar Rescue of Animal Rights. So we are in strong support, and cruelty to animals should be in higher class of felonies. It should be classed the highest of felonies in the penal code. Animal cruelty is not being managed well, and people can trap kittens and throw them into the ocean, which I have heard of this happening in our rescue work. So in Hawaii, there are 3 investigative entities to investigate cruelty to animals: the Humane Society's Animal Abuse Division, Crime Stoppers, and the Honolulu Police Department. The teams have to work together for a stronger chain of command or documentation of the crime being passed on from one office to the other in the work of addressing animal cruelty. And at the congressional level, in 2019, the Senate unanimously passed a bill which makes animal cruelty a federal felony. So the state
Focus on
law.
the bill, please.
Yes. Can I refer to how the state law
Provide us your testimony and focus on the bill, please.
should also operate within the parameters provided by the Federal Animal Cruelty Felony Act? Is that okay?
Thank you.
Okay. So the PACT Act, which stands for Preventing Animal Cruelty and Torture, was approved as a bipartisan legislation and expands a previous law passed in 2010. And this makes animal cruelty a felony. Without this law, the federal law only criminalizes animal cruelty if the wrongdoer creates and sells a video depicting the act of animal cruelty. So there are no federal statutory provisions beyond people creating and selling videos depicting acts of cruelty and torture without this PACT Act. And we can also see the rationale
Could you summarize,
why
please?
the PACT Act was effective, because by law, it's easy to prosecute if there is evidence of the crime. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on this measure? Yes, please. Please introduce yourself again and proceed.
Tiffany Kim for Angel Foundation. I just wanted to express my support for this bill. We come across a lot of animal cruelty in what we do. We rescue dogs. We're solely a dog rescue. But over the last 10 years and 700 dogs that we have worked with, I would say majority of the cases that we see, you're going to see some level of animal cruelty, neglect, abandonment. We've had our first sexual abuse case this past year, so that was kind of it was difficult. So to have these types of things in place so that we know that our communities are safe and that when someone is actually prosecuted, because we know that, the consistency between animal cruelty and into cruelty against humans, there's a huge correlation. So having the ability to prosecute and giving our law enforcement the ability to do that would be really helpful for what we do. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else wishing to testify on this measure? If not, questions, members? If not, thank you to all the testifiers. We're going to move on to the next measure, HB 1682, relating to pet sales beginning January 1, 2025. This measure establishes provisions relating to retail pet sales, authorizes retail pet stores to showcase pet animals owned by a nonprofit animal welfare organization. First up, we have comments from the Attorney General.
Good afternoon, Chair Tarnas, members of the committee, Kelsey Nagata, Deputy Attorney General, providing brief comments on HB 1682. The purpose of the bill is to regulate retail pet stores. However, there does not appear to be wording regarding who would enforce this new section. We have provided proposed wording in our written testimony. I'm available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony in opposition from Ko'olau Pets. Next, we have testimony in support. Oh, yes, please. Welcome.
Hi.
Please introduce yourself and proceed.
My name is Matthew Furtado, and I oppose this bill. I'm Native Hawaiian, and my family has owned and operated Ko'olau Pets for 50 years. The fact that you're giving me 2 minutes to defend my business is incomprehensible. This bill is an assault on my business and credibility, and the wording of this bill I consider slander. That pet stores sell sick and poorly cared for animals is an outright lie with no proof of such allegations. One of the many things that bothers me in this bill is that you want people who bring me animals to get a business license to sell us their babies, when many just breed to educate their children on responsible pet ownership and the circle of life. Little kids earning a few bucks selling their babies to us will have to get a license to sell us a few bunnies for a couple of bucks, which helps offset the cost of upkeeping and maintenance. Using pet stores as a scapegoat for the animal overpopulation is ignorant and false. How about we take a common sense approach? If overpopulation of animals is an issue, how about making spaying and neutering more affordable? How about getting to the root of the problem instead of penalizing small businesses like mine who have provided a service to people who are looking for animal companionship? Some people do not trust buying an animal from a stranger in a parking lot. This bill is a slap in the face of small businesses trying to make a living and goes against what I believe are the roots of this country. Chain stores are killing mom and pop stores nationwide, and this bill helps push the destruction of all small businesses like mine. Thank you for your time, and I hope you vote against this bill because it will lead to the destruction of my family's legacy. and the dreams of many animal lovers that want to start a small business. I would also like to add that if you do happen to decide to adopt this bill, you give all business that it affects ample time to finish off their leases so that we don't lose our houses and homes because of lines that we sign, because of signing papers that guarantees on our loans and leases. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your testimony. Next, we have testimony from the Animal Welfare Institute.
Thank you, Chair. Inga Gibson, Animal Welfare Institute. I just want to say, I think that there's a lot of confusion here. This bill in no way puts anyone out of business. It is simply a record-keeping measure. It's my understanding that Ko'olau Pets, along with many other pet stores, already keep these records. And the issue is that we don't know where these animals are coming from. If there's a disease outbreak, if there's obviously a case of some of these animals being subjected to neglect or cruelty, there's no way to track these animals. I mean, you know, we have these bills, macadamia nut labeling, coffee labeling, seafood labeling. You know, consumers have a right to know the origins of the products that they get, yet we don't even know the origin of the animals that are being sold. So this, Hawaii is one of just a handful of states in the nation that has zero laws when it comes to pet stores, breeders, backyard breeders, retail sales of animals. This is the most modest approach possible. It's not going to put anyone out of business. If you're keeping paperwork, you provide the paperwork to animal control as needed so that they can be responsible and also to register as a business. I mean, some of these animals are being sold for thousands of dollars. And I mean, we're all paying GET taxes, so I think it's very modest. And you know, we feel for those families that operate these stores and do not want to put them out of business. We just want to protect the animals and protect consumers as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next testimony is from Hawaiian Humane Society.
Chair, Vice Chair, committee members, Stephanie Kendrick with the Hawaiian Humane Society. First, I want to say we 100% agree with Mr. Furtado that no one should be buying pets out of a parking lot. This measure is about accountability. It does not require pet stores to get animals from any place other than where they're getting them now. It just requires them to share that information with both the purchaser of the animal so they have some accountability and with law enforcement so that we have some transparency on who's breeding animals and in what quantities. We think that it's an extremely modest attempt to get at what's going on with pet breeding in the state of Hawaii, which is in a completely unregulated industry, and we hope that you'll support it. I would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony from Carolyn Goloyu. Next, we have testimony from Mary Furtado. Come on up, Ms. Furtado. We can, because we can move the microphone down to you if it's at, yeah, just bend it down. No, just bend it down to her. There you go.
You don't need to get up.
You can stay there, Auntie. Yep.
Okay. Hi. My name is Napua Furtado. I'm one of the original owners from Ko'olau Pets. We opened that up in 1974. Next month will be 50 years in business. This bill I oppose because it takes away our rights. The rights that we have had for 50 years in doing business. And we've had a good business for 50 years. We haven't broken any rules. We don't sell sick puppies. We take care of our consumers. We don't buy puppies from Montgomery or any puppy mills. They sell their puppies in a parking lot. And a large-scale breeders. You know, we live around in an island surrounded around water. And so we cannot get as much of the animals that we like to get in for our pet shops because of state regulations. So now they want more regulations. They want to regulate us. We got enough regulations. You're taking away my rights to do business. You're taking my rights as a Hawaiian. I'm 3/4 Hawaiian. I'm in the right house right here, Judiciary and Hawaiian Affairs. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ms. Furtado. Next, we have testimony from Leah Hollingsworth Ramsey.
Aloha. So I mostly stand on my written testimony, but there are things that I wanted to bring up. And you'll have to excuse me, I get nervous with these things.
Take a deep breath. It's okay.
Okay.
Please proceed.
Yeah, so first, the bill starts out talking about puppies and puppy mills, and the whole premise is that these pet stores are buying their dogs from these puppy mills. And then later in the bill, the language switches to all pets. And so when you talk about documenting and having a photograph for every animal, for every pet that comes in there, do you know they sell fish by the thousands? A tiny little neon tetra that's not even an inch long. Okay, and they're supposed to photograph each and every neon tetra, each and every common green budgie. What's the purpose of that keeping, the record keeping? Why do that? The young animals that they sell, they're gonna change over time. Their looks will change, how they look, you know. What does that do? I just think it's Humane Society's way of burying the pet owners with an unreasonable amount of paperwork and having to maintain that paperwork. If somebody sells mice to a pet store, they don't even generate enough money to pay for the cost of the general excise tax license. The same for something like a little neon tetra. And people's animals, they reproduce. They need something, they need them to go somewhere, so they sell them to the pet store. You know, it's such a small amount of money for a lot of the animals. And the language of the bill expanded to include everything, okay? And that's a problem, okay? Also, the bill limits their ability to move their location. It restricts their ability to sell or transfer their business. That's how people, you know, for a family, they pass on their business to their family members. There's other people I know who have sold their pet stores. That would prohibit that ability. That's what this bill would do. Okay, it's there in the language. Okay. And the other aspect is, you know, there is language in there saying that they can showcase the Humane Society animals. There's a reason why pet stores choose young animals. It has to do with the size and their temperament, okay? When you have a small puppy, they don't have the bite strength, okay, to inflict injury on a customer. So they're cute, they love everybody, people can handle them, they're not a danger. Whereas if you have a big dog, a full-grown dog, that dog has the potential to, you know, inflict injury. And I know there's testimony that's been submitted about somebody that got a dog from the Humane Society, and that dog attacked somebody. When they were told, oh, this dog is safe, this dog is fine, the temperament is fine, you know, that's why the pet stores don't want those animals there. They should be able to determine what is right for their business model. Most of the animals that are sold by co-op pets, a lot of them are all AKC dogs. So they come with a certificate. It says the breeder's name, okay? So there is a way of tracking it, who the breeders are, where they're coming from. Most of the times they have a huge book of people that say, I want this dog, and they wait, and they wait, and they wait until that select breed comes up. If they were sourcing their animals from puppy mills, they would have it in an instant, because all those people would be like rushing to you know, fulfill those orders. But they don't. The people wait, and they spend a lot of money, but it's a very honest and legitimate way to purchase an animal. You walk into a well-lighted pet store, you can put it on your charge card. If there's a problem, you can go back. Whereas if you take that away, okay, you force people to go to Craigslist or the newspaper online. And I know people that have gotten ripped off, okay? They'll say, oh, I have this cute little bird, or I have this cute little dog. There's all these other people. You need to put a deposit. Okay, and the person sends by Cash App a deposit, and then that person ghosts them. And they've lost that money, but they're too ashamed. They're too ashamed to go to anybody and say anything.
Thank you.
So.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Next, we have testimony from Mara Hansen. Next, we have testimony from Vivi Franson. Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on House Bill 1682?
Raptones, I would like to testify on this measure.
Mr. Kubo, go ahead.
Clayton Kubo, Waimea Kauai. it seems like to me, as I listen to all the testimonies, even prior measures, it just kind of blows me away. But this one blows me even harder. You know, more regulations upon small business owners. Come on, you know, more regulatory, more, you know, it's like, when is it going to end? You know, and the previous testifier, she hit the nail right on the head. How you going to act? You know, Humane Society want to butt their business in any kind of business, in everything. Mahalo for testifying. I'll be waiting for that other measure. Mahalo.
Okay, thank you. And we have one more testifier. Please go ahead, Ms. Young. Focus on the bill, please.
Aloha, Angela Melody Young, testifying on behalf of Roar Rescue of Animal Rights. And so this measure seeks to protect animals with those who are cruel in their store practices and may not be aware of health standards, right? And just because there are responsible good pet stores, that doesn't account for those who are cruel in their store practices or may not be aware of health standards. So there are good pet stores and bad pet stores. And this measure does not punish the good pet stores. This is, I don't think, a burdensome law because it protects the safety of living creatures. And we all care about animals. I think this is an agreeable measure to protect animals. Perhaps to make this measure the least restrictive is to create a training class from Department of Agriculture to train people in pet store standards. For example, the Department of Health operates the food handler safety test to make sure that people who sell food products have safe items that they're selling to the product. They just go through a training class. And to kind of parallel the example, right? Because you don't have an example law of this, food producers who raise
Focus
livestock
on the bill, please.
for consumption.
No, focus on the bill, please.
Okay, so if animals, wait, can I
Focus on the bill, please.
parallel it to a
No,
food
please focus on the bill.
producer example? Okay, then that's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Anyone else wishing to testify on this measure? Yes, please come on up, introduce yourself. Thanks, Janine. Welcome. Please introduce yourself and testify.
Hi, I'm Victoria Furtado. I work at the pet store. I oppose this bill. I just wanted to come up here. I did submit written testimony, but I just want to say that not just our store, other pet stores on the island, as far as I know, all of them do take their puppies to the vet. They are double checked before sold. So this whole thing for consumer protection is not necessary. It's just giving stores additional work to do. And then on top of it, them saying that it is not trying to stop pet stores, then why does it say that after that January 1st date, that no other pet stores can sell puppies or animals, pet animals, and also that they have to have the same ownership and in the same location. Coal Pets has moved numerous times, so that would prevent that in the future happening. And that's all I like to say.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Anyone else wishing to testify? Yes, please.
Harold Hahn Jr. again with the Hawaiian Humane Society. From an animal control services perspective, which I'm responsible for, I mean, I've known Ko'olau Pets since 1974 too, as well as the family. They're very cooperative when we have inquiries. So I certainly appreciate you all. I think from my perspective though, it's like we have cases where someone is breeding French bulldogs. We had a case. And it makes it extremely hard when other pet shops aren't as forthcoming when we try to do our investigative work for a large puppy mill, where we struggle because we hit a dead point where we can't identify the breeders. Another example was under our Nimitz Viaduct, when there was a large homeless population under there. There were probably like 60 dogs and puppies under there or more, and they were selling to a pet shop, an unscrupulous one, and we were trying to get a handle on what was going on because a lot of these puppies live in horrible conditions. So I think it's more, for me, it's more, and the Humane Society from field operations, more of an investigative tool that we can use to help our investigation without having to get enough probable cause for like search warrants full on, because that gets really complicated as well, which we do, but it's a long drawn out process. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hahn. Anyone else wishing to testify on this measure? If not, questions, members? If not, thank you very much to all the testifiers on this. Let's go on to the next measure. This is House Bill 1980 relating to animal cruelty, creates penalties relating to the fighting of birds. On this measure, we have the testimony from the Department of Attorney General. Ms. Nakamatsu, welcome. Please proceed.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Deputy Attorney General Tricia Nakamatsu appearing on behalf of the Department of the Attorney General. We had submitted comments on this bill, suggesting certain amendments that we feel would help to clarify the definition of fight between birds. In particular, we were concerned that there's a mixed state of mind with the words "with the intent" currently being in the definition that then creates a conflict, potential conflict with the offenses themselves, which are a knowing or reckless state of mind. So we have suggestions, suggested language in our testimony and available for questions, if any.
Thank you very much. We have testimony and support from the Department of Law Enforcement. Next, we have testimony in opposition from the Office of the Public Defender. Mr. Bento.
Thank you once again, Chair Tarnas, members of the committee. William Bento from the Public Defender's Office. I'd like to incorporate my testimony from HB 1580 into this bill as well, very similar testimony. The preamble to the bill cites an incident that occurred out on the west side in Honolulu. From what I understand, the main impetus of that was the gambling that was going on in regards to the chicken fight. Now, the chicken fighting itself is not acceptable. But what we need to do is to give our law enforcement community the tools they need so that they can enforce the current laws dealing with gun possession, gun usage, gambling in the community. I think it's safe to say that when there's going to be a big chicken fight where money is at stake, the community knows about it. We have to change the attitude so the community is willing to help law enforcement to infiltrate that situation and have a presence there. That's the only way you're going to stop this from happening. Harsher laws and penalties are just going to drive it underground and make it even harder to stop. So that's why we oppose this bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony and support from the Honolulu Police Department. Mr. Lambert. Welcome. Welcome, please proceed.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Domingo Manaug Jr., on behalf of the Narcotics Vice Division, Honolulu Police Department, City and County of Honolulu. Mr. Chair, we stand by our submitted written testimony in support of HB Bill 1980 relating to animal cruelty. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We've received written testimony and support from the Office of the Prosecuting Attorney, from the County of Kauai Office of the Prosecuting Attorney, and then we also have testimony and support from Hina's Legacy Rescue Foundation. Chantel Moniz, welcome.
Hi, Chantel Moniz from Hina's Legacy Rescue Foundation. In support of this bill, we are strongly in support of this bill because a lot of, as the Public Defender's Office had stated, there's a lot of crimes, not only on the west side, but it's all over the islands. And it does stem from animal cruelty. It does stem from the cockfighting, along with animals getting shot and killed, again, like Nakoa did because of the cockfighting. I think for the most part, yes, there's a lot of things that needs to be addressed as far as guns, as far as the attitude of people, but when they are brought up, in that lifestyle and they are brought up in that type of community, it's really hard to target that part. But if there are bills that are a lot harsher for those crimes, I feel like maybe it could at some point stop. I don't know, because that's a big money maker. Cockfighting is a big money maker, and a lot of people get killed for it. I live on the west side. I see a lot of things that happen. I do have family members that's a part of that too. They know how I feel about it, and I don't engage in it, but I know what's behind the scenes of all of that. So I am in support of this bill.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony from the Hawaiian Humane Society. In support.
Chair, Vice Chair, committee members, Stephanie Kendrick from the Hawaiian Humane Society. As Chantel said, this is about money. The reason that these crimes aren't more harshly prosecuted, the reason that local law enforcement struggles so much to get a handle of this is because the amount of money involved is enormous. The reason that the community can't be relied on to help us solve this problem is because they're scared of these guys. I mean, we saw what happened in Waianae in April. This is not some fun cultural event. This is a dangerous activity that brings gambling, it brings drugs, it brings weapons into our community, it brings death into our community. The animal welfare aspect of it is real. I mean, I've had the privilege of working on this bill for months now with Inga Gibson of the Animal Welfare Institute. She has pictures of some of the paraphernalia used in these fights. These are animals slashing each other to death for entertainment. This isn't something we want children exposed to. This isn't something we want to celebrate as a cultural activity. This is something that needs to stop for the protection of animals and the protection of our community. And what the last few months have been about is working with law enforcement precisely as the Public Defender's Office recommended, to give them the tools they need to stop this scourge in our communities. And it's been an intense collaborative effort among police departments, prosecutors from across the state, and animal welfare to get those tools written into law. And I urge you to move this measure forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have testimony from the Animal Welfare Institute.
Thank you very much. First of all, thank you so much, Chair Tarnas and Vice Chair Takayama, Chair Tarnas, for introducing this really critical measure. As Stephanie mentioned, this is a product of months and months of collaboration with county prosecutors, input from across the state, with the Honolulu Prosecuting Attorney's Office, Trish Nakamatsu, who's now with the AG's office, and animal control and care agencies across the state, because it's so critical. We don't want to put anything forward that is unenforceable or that is ineffective, but that's what we have right now. Obviously, the existing animal cruelty statute is a misdemeanor. Law enforcement can expand on this, but literally they can only prosecute those with their hands on the birds in the pits. And, there's just a handful of cases. Most of the judges are giving them $50 fine. So it's time that we increase the penalties, because this does go hand in hand with illegal gambling and drugs and criminal activity. There's a federal case being prosecuted right now. The feds had to become involved because it went on for so many years and it had so many different nexuses to other federal crimes. So this is, the time has come for this measure. I have personally worked on this for decades here. I have myself been involved in a number of cockfighting raids, not only in Hawaii, but across the country. And I have seen firsthand how this really destroys communities. I could have this room, I wish I could have this room full of all the people that support this, but the bottom line is they're scared to death. They're fearful of retaliation because they live in these communities where this happens. I praise my colleagues who came out, but that's the bottom line. This is about protecting communities, and it's time we adopt this measure. It is modeled after our existing dogfighting law, so nothing that we have proposed in this language is novel. I worked on our state dogfighting law back in 2012. It is a felony, both first and second degree here were reasonable with second-degree penalties for the lower, lesser offenses such as being a spectator, gambling, but some of the most serious offenses such that HPD really wanted to see in this bill, I'm sorry, and I'll conclude, is one is that minors are attending these events. And right now, there is no explicit penalty. So this would make it a felony for someone to knowingly allow a minor to attend. And most importantly, it allows for nuisance abatement proceedings. These properties, HPD, we all know where they are year after year after year. Right now, HPD doesn't have the tools they need. And these nuisance abatement proceedings would really go a long way with these property owners who are these chronic offenders, just like the illegal game rooms. So strong support, happy to answer any questions about this measure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We've received written testimony in support, 41 individuals testifying in support and 1 individual testifying in opposition. Is there anyone else here wishing to testify on 1980? If you would please testify on the measure itself. Please proceed.
Angela Melody Young testifying in strong support on behalf of ROAR, Rescue of Animal Rights. So within this statutory measure, it sets statutory parameters to constitute the legal limits of bird fighting. Yet it doesn't define birds and chickens, so it's confusing as to what the measure is talking about, birds or chickens. And why is this important? Because if you go to Hawaii Revised Statute, Title 12, Conservation and Resources, Chapter 183D, Wildlife, the chapter about wildlife, Section 1, definitions, as used in this chapter, unless the
Ms.
context...
Young, if you could focus on this bill,
Right,
that would be good. Just give your
trying
recommendation.
to emphasize why it's important to define birds and chickens, okay? Because in the DLNR chapter from 183, it defines birds, okay? So 183 D-1 definitions. Game means birds and mammals designated by law or by rule for hunting. Game birds means birds designated by law or by rule for hunting. So it defines it by game and game birds, the statutory definition of bird, okay? And usually definitions can apply to a few chapters in the Hawaii Revised Statute, right? But in this measure that is being proposed today, it does not match the bird definition in DLNR's Chapter 183. So it's going to get confusing. Are you talking about birds or chickens, right? So ROAR's proposal is to define birds and chickens.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to testify in this measure? Any questions, members? Seeing none, we'll move on. Thank you. Relating to House Bill 1689, relating to parrotfish. This measure amends conservation resources law to prohibit commercial sales of parrotfish that have been caught by spearing and the spearing of parrotfish in state waters after sunset and before sunrise. First up, we have testimony from the Department of Land and Natural Resources. Welcome, Mr. Nielsen.
Welcome, Brian Nielsen, representing Department of Land and Natural Resources. Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. We're providing comments on this bill. We greatly appreciate the importance of parrotfish and uhu species. Their contribution to the ocean ecosystem is immense. Their importance as a food source, their importance culturally, are absolutely critical for Hawaii. And there's also great concerns with their conservation, not only in terms of is there enough to sustain long-term fishing for this generation and future generations, but also is there enough to continue to be able to provide those ecosystem services for the reef. So given those important issues, the department did a series of stakeholder engagement over the past 3 to 4 years to develop increased protections for uhu. And so the Land Board just recently passed in December bag limits for uhu. There was previously no bag limits. There was unlimited take basically of uhu. We also set some, or adjusted some size restrictions. We created a commercial permit to harvest and sell parrotfish, and then set an annual catch limit. So these are statewide rules, but you know, we understand that more conservation for these important species may be needed. So you know, the next step would be working at an island level, just considering that uhu population status varies across islands, harvest varies, different land use issues varies, and so the next step will be honing in kind of at the island-based scale to make sure that these species are here for generations to come. But happy to take any further questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony from Ted Boland.
Thank you, Chair Tarnas, Vice Chair Takayama, members of the committee. Ted Boland on behalf of the Hawaii Reef and Ocean Coalition. In my written testimony, I've talked about why parrotfish are so important for the reefs, and the previous speaker covered it well from the Division of Aquatic Resources, so I won't go into that. But I will say that the stocks of these critical fish are depleted, and we need abundance in order for them to be able to save the reefs, help save the reefs. So this bill would help the reefs by limiting major sources of loss of uhu, and that is night fishing, when the fish are asleep and they're easy prey, defenseless, and the commercial sale, some by poachers. It would not be a matter of environment versus fishers. It is not interfering with daytime or subsistence recreational fishing. It's only dealing with commercial sale by spearfishing and not by net or trap. So it's a narrow bill, and I think it's an appropriate bill to protect the reefs and to protect the ecosystems that are so vital that are helped by the parrotfish. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. I'm available for questions.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony from Mr. Godfrey Akaka. Please proceed on Zoom. Godfrey Akaka, please proceed. We hear you.
Yeah, trying to.
We hear you, so you can proceed. Did we just lose him? You don't need your video, Mr. Akaka. You can just speak.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
sir?
yes, please proceed.
Yeah. So I represent a lot of subsistence fishers. The problem is that I see is there's no data that shows depletion of uhu. There is data that shows fish that do not reside in coastlines because of the presence of man. And so this is just another full-on attack on our subsistence fishers. I would like to see data reflecting that. And also, I want to point out that man is just one predator of these species. There are seals, there are sharks, there are a number of other predators that feed off of the uhu. And, you know, this is food for us. And there, as Dar stated, the herbivore proposal already provided bag limits. So now it's increasing restrictions is making it more difficult for people to just catch food. This is what it is, food. And I'm kind of curious to know where the money is coming from with all of these organizations and if it's tied into tourism or if it's tied into other related sources that going to give them an advantage. But yeah, so we oppose this bill. Mahalo.
Thank you very much. We have testimony and support from For the Fishes. Just for those who didn't see her on Zoom, Ms. Gibson stood up and said she's standing on her testimony and support because they don't see you over there. We have testimony from Greg Gruwell in support. Testimony from Mark Hickson in support. Please come on up.
Aloha, Chair Tarnas, Vice Chair, members of the committee. I'm Mark Hickson. I'm a professor of marine biology at UH Manoa, speaking as a private citizen today. I'm here to emphasize the written scientific testimony provided by Doctors Randy Kosaki, Alan Friedlander, Kavinka Winter, and myself. Why in the world would we want to have a bill that restricts spearing uhu at night when DAR has just had their rules package passed by the Land Board just in December? If you ask my friends who are subsistence fishers, they'll say it's just not pono to spear a fish while it's sleeping at night in a hole. If you ask doe care officers I know, they say it's because spearing at night is an opportunity for pillaging of reefs and illegal sales. If you ask the scientific community who has been studying reefs for decades, it's because we're terrified. We are terrified of what's going to be happening with our reefs soon if we don't bring the uhu, especially, and other herbivores back rapidly. The provisions of the new herbivore fishing rules have been watered down substantially since they were first introduced in December 2022. At that time, it was a reasonable package. But if you look at the final package that was approved, there was provision after provision after provision that was removed. And now they were fully accepted by the status quo, who had testified repeatedly against any kind of changes. It's a classic case of the exploiters doing what they can to maintain exploitation versus those of us who are looking at the future. So I just want to finish by saying our reefs are gravely threatened. Many of our reefs have already degraded, and with coral bleaching predicted to be much more severe, and probably every year within 10 years as the model projections, we don't have time to wait and see if these new incremental rules will work. They are insufficient. We need to take stronger action to protect these fish, which are our primary resilience mechanism to have our reefs withstand the onslaughts they've already faced and the worsening onslaughts. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Next, Mike Wilson, in support. Welcome, Justice Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Chair Tarnas and Vice Chair Takayama. And it's a great pleasure to be here speaking to the Hawaii State Legislature. And I also say it's really exciting. I mean, these fish, you know, anybody that's in the ocean that sees a kala or nuhu sees a true Hawaii. And of course, the fishermen, you could call them Native Hawaiian fishermen, are completely in favor of this bill. My friends on the west side that are Hawaiian, the idea that you would be poking uhu at night when they're sleeping, it's just a straightforward cultural practice that is completely, as Professor Hickson says, not pono. But the interesting thing about this from a political point of view is that it's a familiar chapter in resource management in Hawaii. Having been the director of the Department of Land and Natural Resources, it's a fascinating kind of echo of the past of exploitation. For example, you have no scientific opposition. You have world-class scientists who have volunteered their time. Professor Hickson, Professor Friedlander, I mean, they are award-winning scientists. Same thing's true with Randy Kosaki. He is a long-time ocean man as well as an expert for the federal government. So there's no scientific opposition. In addition to that, you have a community that has worked so hard over and over again to go to DLNR, including doe care officers, and plead for meaningful regulations. There's no evidence that the regulations that DLNR has are meaningful. But to DLNR's credit, they're not opposing this. I give credit to Mr. Nielsen to not cave in to the political pressure. But you represent the political pressure. So the interesting chapter that's a repeat is you have inadequate regulations. It's presented to the legislature to try to protect the public interest and also the legal duty for, if you will, a public trust responsibility. In a history, as you've seen from my testimony, where DLNR has failed in the past, in the Umberger case to do so. And so this is a tribute to community management. That's our only savior now in Hawaii. If you look at Kauai, if you look at Molokai, even if you are looking at the struggles of Maui, DLNR is hardly present. Marine life conservation districts represent oftentimes community management, but that's what we're left with. So the communities come forward with remarkable volunteer scientific evidence from men and women who have a true commitment to the culture and the resources. And is this going to pass your committee? I won't give you my prediction. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony from Kenneth Martin. Please proceed.
Hello, I'm Ken Martin. I'm a private citizen. I live in Waialua, Hawaii. I support the prohibition against spearfishing uhu parrotfish at night contained in HB 1689 because parrotfish are so important to the long-term sustainability of both our reefs and our white sandy beaches. And parrotfish are being overfished and depleted in Hawaii in a way that is simply not sustainable. According to scientists at the University of Hawaii, approximately 70% the white sand in Hawaii comes from uhu, parrotfish. Parrotfish feed on the algae that grow on the surface of many reefs. In this process of eating, the parrotfish teeth also chew off a small bit of coral, which is ground up further by special grinding teeth and eventually expelled, pooped out, as white sand. A single large parrotfish can produce 2,000 pounds of white sand or more per year. In addition to parrotfish helping us preserve our beaches by producing about 70% of all the white sand in Hawaii, scientists also tell us that parrotfish are good for the health of our coral reefs. In addition to removing the algae that sometimes smother and kill our coral reefs, the small bite marks on the coral actually help stimulate new coral growth, which helps corals be more resilient against water pollution and also more resilient against coral bleaching caused by warming ocean water. Uhu parrotfish are already listed as depleted by the National Marine Fisheries Service. They've been overfished in Hawaii in a way that is not sustainable on a long-term basis. The scientific evidence is also consistent with my personal observations and the observations of my friends who spearfish and surf. On both the North Shore and South Shore of Oahu, we used to see many parrotfish. Now we see very few. Parrotfish tend to be wary of humans in the daytime. At night, however, parrotfish are typically in a sleep-like state and frequently sleeping under rock overhangs or in crevices, and particularly vulnerable to spearfishing at night. When an underwater hunter finds a sleeping parrotfish and shines a light on it, it typically does not swim away, which makes it an easy target. Just swim up to it and spear it. Many South Pacific islands have similar species and subspecies of parrotfish to those found in Hawaii. And on many of those South Pacific islands, parrotfish have been absolutely decimated by excessive spearfishing at night. On Guam, at least one subspecies of parrotfish is already extinct. Here in Hawaii, all too often, especially on Oahu, large groups of people will spearfish for uhu, parrotfish, at night with lights and collectively kill dozens and dozens of parrotfish and more or less sweep an area clean of all parrotfish. In order to help protect this depleted but critically important species of fish, there really should be a limitation that spearfishing for parrotfish may be done only during daylight hours. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
In my written testimony, there's links for the scientific evidence that supports all the statements that I've made. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, Sarita Rich. Please proceed. Could you unmute yourself, Sarita Rich, and unmute yourself and turn on your video? No luck? Okay, we'll come back to you. Clayton Kubo? Clayton Kubo, please proceed.
Clayton Kubo, I'm here, Kauai. I'm honorable to see me testify on this measure. But when is this gonna end? You know, you guys keep coming after us, We just wanna gather food. That's all this is, it's about food, okay? More regulations upon more regulations upon more regulations, yeah? And that's just another thing, you know, the tip of the iceberg, I guess I'm gonna call it. You know, I am from this town of Waimea. I never come from nowhere else. I just trying to make sure that we get the right to protect the forms of gathering that is legal. That is legal. I've been asking for data for many, many years. But what? No data has been provided. And I'm going to say again, no data has been provided toward me. So in the end, it's this way, okay? They came after the aquarium guys. Now they're coming after the people that is from Hawaii that is trying to gather for food. Please consider these words. When is this going to end? Is the fisher gatherer the low-hanging fruit? And specifically, I do night diving, okay? I do night diving. And I tell you what, I never did lose one fish when I was night diving. Never did. As for other farms, yeah, you might be able to lose some fish, but I never did. Thank me testify on this measure.
Thank you very much. Is Sarita Rich on now? Please go ahead, Sarita Rich.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, aloha. My name is Sarita Rich, and I'm a teacher, an artist, and a mother living and working in Honolulu. I've submitted a written testimony in support of HB 1689, and just would like to once more urge voters to consider a holistic approach on this issue and really look at what science and history and ancestral wisdom and culture say about how essential parrotfish are to a thriving Hawaii. And I want voters to be brave and bold and not be afraid to do the right thing for everyone. And I have a daughter here who also loves the ocean and loves parrotfish, and I want her to know that even the smallest voice matters and deserves to be heard. So I'm going to turn the time over to her to share just a brief statement, and that will conclude our testimony. I just want to say thank you for this chance to participate today.
Aloha, my name is Stella Rich, and I'm a third grader at Voyager Public Charter School. My principal asked us to be upstanders, or people who speak to create positive change. Today, I'm hoping for a change, and would like to speak up for the uhu. I learned that fishermen hunt uhu at night when they are defenseless in their sleep and sell them for profit. This is not okay. I saw a picture of fishermen standing proudly over more than 100 dead fish spread on the ground. I counted 89 uhu, and that makes me sad because parrotfish protect our reefs. They eat algae that can suffocate corals, and they chomp on dead coral and then poop out clean sand. Some kinds of uhu individually produce up to 800 pounds of sand each year. That's a lot of sand. I moved to Hawaii 5 years ago and didn't know about parrotfish. I discovered them in 2022 while doing research for a local art contest about acts of kindness. I found out what uhu do for the environment and wanted to paint them because fish deserve kindness too. My poster is called Save the Uhu.
I know not everyone can see this, but this is her creation. And
Thank
we
you.
learned about all the different species, and we're just wanted to show that for just a second.
Thank you. Very impressive. Very impressive. Please go ahead and finish up your testimony.
After I made this, I met scientists and other artists who are also upstanders teaching us about Malama Ka'aina. Voting to save the uhu is how we Malama Ka'aina. I hope we listen to each other and work together to make choices that preserve both the land and our people, so keiki like me can grow up in a healthy Hawaii. Mahalo for your time, and I hope you have a nice day.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Next, we have testimony from Maki Morinoi. Nope, not present. And we have additional testimony in support and in opposition. Is there anyone else wishing to testify in this measure?
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, and the committee, Angela Melody Young. Wishing to comment on behalf of Aurora Rescue of Animal Rights. So parrotfish are blue and green fish, which are easy to shoot and to make a nice meal with. But it is also somewhat dangerous to consume due to the high prevalence of ciguatera, which is a toxin that comes from the fish eating the algae on the reefs. Ciguatera fish poisoning is a foodborne illness caused by eating tropical reef fish, which have accumulated a naturally occurring toxin or poison called ciguatoxin. Small fish plants which grow on and around coral reefs naturally produce this poison, ciguatoxin. Certain fish, groupers, barracudas, moray eels, sturgeon, sea bass, red snapper, amberjack, mackerel, parrotfish, surgeonfish, and triggerfish can cause ciguatera food poisoning. The
Ms. Young, if you
CDC
could please focus on this bill.
Yes. So why are people trying to eat the parrotfish if it's classified within this group of poisonous fish? And direct from the CDC, from the national website, it says avoid or limit eating fresh reef fish, especially barracuda and moray eel, although parrotfish is not the two specific fishes that it
You want to summarize,
lists. It's within the group of the poisonous fish. So I will summarize by saying that we have to think about sustainable fishing and also eating poisonous fish. And can I talk about the U.S. fisheries? Okay.
Thank you.
We should think about our food choices.
Thank you very much. Anyone else wishing to testify on this measure? If not, questions, members? If not, we'll move on. Thank you. We're HB 1541 relating to Suicide Prevention and Awareness Month. This amends Act 36 to change the effective date to July 1st, 2024. First up, we have testimony from the Department of Health in support.
Yes, good afternoon, Chair and Vice Chair and members of the committee. My name is Dr. Alvin Z. Bronstein. I'm Branch Chief for EMS Injury Prevention, and we stand on our written testimony in support. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Anyone else wishing to testify on this measure? If not, questions, members? Seeing none, we'll move on. House Bill 2447 relating to parking for disabled persons. This establishes a travel placard to be issued to an existing permittee and allows the person to park a vehicle at a Hawaii airport or port reserved accessible parking space and take the second placard for use at the travel destination. First up, we have testimony in support from the State Council on Developmental Disabilities. Next, we have testimony in support from the Disability and Communication Access Board.
Hi, good afternoon, Chair and committee members. Brian Mick here on behalf of the Disability and Communication Access Board and our Executive Director, Kirby Shaw. We'll stand on our written testimony, but I'm available to try and answer any questions on the bill. Thank you.
You very much. And we've received written testimony in support from 6 individuals and in opposition from 1 individual. Anyone else wishing to testify in this measure? If not, questions, members? No, seeing none, we'll move on. Thank you. HB 2351 relating to workplace safety. This measure allows a person who employs or contracts with a healthcare worker who suffers an act of violence to report the event to law enforcement and petition for a temporary restraining order and injunction under certain circumstances. On this measure, we have testimony from the Office of the Public Defender.
Thank you, and good afternoon once again, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. William Bento of the Public Defender's Office. We just want to point out that we had a few concerns as far as the language of the bill was concerned. The first part of the bill doesn't seem to limit it to situations in the workplace, but could be things that happen in a person's private life and may allow or maybe even make the employer feel that they need to inquire about these things that may have happened in the private life of an employee. And, you know, we understand why the bill is being proposed and who it's trying to protect, but this could create a friction between employer and employee and get into things that the employee should not be privy to, as well as possibly create liability if the employer chose not to ask questions. The key word here is may. And so if they chose not to, is that creating liability for the employer? Just some things to think about. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Next, we receive testimony in support from the Hawaii Government Employee Association. and testimony and support from the Waianae Coast Comprehensive Health Center. Ms. Gonzalez, please proceed.
Hi, my name is Teresa Gonzalez. Thank you, Chair and Vice Chair and members of the committee. I am the Chief Compliance and Ethics Officer at the Waianae Coast Comprehensive Health Center, and I'm here to testify on behalf of the Health Center and express our strong support for this House bill, an important piece of legislation aimed at enhancing the safety and security of healthcare workers by allowing the employers to report acts of violence and petition for a temporary restraining order. The healthcare sector has witnessed a concerning rise in workplace violence, with healthcare workers facing threats and physical harm at an alarming rate. As the person who manages our incident reporting system, I can attest to the rise in this violence. I have been in healthcare for over 30 years, and in the last few years, I have never seen so much acts of violence against healthcare workers. It is heartbreaking. Healthcare center staff want to save lives and help people. Becoming a victim of violence, either verbal or physical, isn't part of our jobs. This bill offers a practical step to the right direction by allowing employers to take proactive steps to secure TROs on behalf of their employees, fostering a safe work environment for those that are hurt or threatened on site when they're at work. Other states have enacted similar provisions. They're in my written testimony. I implore you to pass this bill, and I thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you very much. Anyone else wishing to testify on this measure, HB 2531? If not, questions, members? Seeing none, we'll move on. Thank you very much to the testifiers. Next, House Bill 1664 relating to public corruption. This increases the penalties for bribery offenses under certain circumstances. First up, we have the Attorney General. Welcome, Ms. Nakamatsu. Please proceed.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Deputy Attorney General Tricia Nakamatsu, appearing on behalf of the Department of the Attorney General. We do support this bill, as we agree the specific types of bribery that are highlighted by the bill do merit a higher degree of classification than the existing offense of bribery. Our testimony does include a proposed HD1, which we feel addresses certain issues as an alternative to the current approach for just structuring the way the new offense would be created. We believe that by creating bribery in the first degree, bribery in the second degree, and then a third statute, using the current HRS 710-1040 as a third statute to establish the common, essentially a definition of what bribery is the best approach at this time. We also have some smaller recommendations, but those are all contained within our proposed HD1. Available for questions, if any.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony from the Office of the Public Defender.
Good afternoon again, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. William Bent of the Public Defender's Office. Our office does oppose this bill. We do believe that classifying this type of bribery as a Class A felony is just too harsh. We're talking here about 20 years of incarceration with no chance of probation. Already the statute says that a person can't receive a deferral on a Class B felony, and I know that we probably had some opposition to that last time when we discussed that bill as well. But this, we just feel that a Class A felony calling for 20 years of incarceration with no chance of probation should be limited to those situations where the person poses the grievous danger to the community. We don't believe that the people that would be prosecuted under this bill are those types of individuals. We do think that giving the court the ability to structure a sentence that not only punishes but deters others from this type of activity would be a better way and a better use of resources. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony and support from the Honolulu Police Department. And we testimony and support from 4 individuals and in opposition from 1 individual at Honolulu Department of Prosecuting Attorney in opposition. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on HB 1664? Please proceed, and please focus on the bill.
Yes, Angela Melody Young testifying on behalf of CARES, wishing to comment. So public corruption is a big deal. And there is a Senate bill,
Focus on this bill, please.
2216, yes. It's about the ethics of operations. If we're going to address public corruption, then we should refer to the standard set forth about educating the public about ethics. So in this chapter,
Ms.
it
Young,
says,
please focus on this bill.
okay, so the Ethics Commission has a legal right to distribute publications without cost to the public and must initiate and maintain programs with purpose of educating the citizens and all officials and staff
Ms. Young,
about the
please
ethics
focus on this bill.
of government employment. So therefore, if we're going to address public corruption, we must also address the dissemination of education as stated in the State Ethics Commission chapter of the Hawaii Revised Statute. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to testify in this measure? Questions, members? Seeing none, we'll move on. Thank you very much. House Bill 1884, relating to standards of conduct. This clarifies disclosures required from members of the legislature. First up, we have Hawaii State Ethics Commission, Executive Director Robert Harris. Welcome, please proceed.
Good afternoon. Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. I appreciate your patience. It's been a long hearing. I'll try to be brief. This bill arose out of the Commission on Standards to Improve Conduct, done under the leadership of the House. The measure moved forward last year, and last year it did pass. However, the Senate did have some concerns about it and change the language somewhat at the last minute. This bill attempts to clarify and sort of go back to the intent of the original bill that the Commission to Improve Standards of Conduct had issued, and hopefully also resolve the Senate's concerns. Appreciate your willingness to hear this bill. Happy to answer any questions you might have. Aloha.
Thank you very much. And we've received testimony and support from Gerard Silva. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on this measure? Questions, members? Seeing none, thank you. We'll move on to the last bill on the agenda, House Bill 2365, related to transit-oriented development planning. This amends the membership of the Hawaii Interagency Council for Transit-Oriented Development to replace the Director of Law Enforcement with the Director of Corrections and Rehabilitation. And on this measure, we have testimony and support from the State of Hawaii Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. Next, we have testimony and support from the Office of Planning and Sustainable Development. Welcome. Please introduce yourself and proceed.
Thank you, Chair Tarnas. This is a minor, Harrison Rue for the record for OPSD. This is a minor housekeeping bill to fix a puka when the two departments, DLE was divided into two separate departments, and the membership of the TOD Council was directed to the Director of Law Enforcement, and it should really be the Director of the Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. DCR staff are the ones who work with us regularly in planning around their facilities in the TOD areas. So we're recommending that that be fixed in this bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Harrison. Anyone else wishing to testify in this measure? Questions, members? Seeing none, thank you very much to all the testifiers. We're going to now move into decision-making. Thank you, members, for your endurance. First up, House Bill 2802, proposing an amendment to Article 1, Section 23 of the Hawaii Constitution relating to marriage. I recommend we move this out with amendments. There'll be technical amendments. We need to correct some typographical error in the bill. It refers to Article 1, and it uses the numeral 1 as opposed to the, it uses the digit 1 as opposed to the letter Roman numeral 1. So that's the way you refer to the Constitution. You're supposed to use Roman numeral 1. So we're just going to make that change and any other technical amendments in the bill itself. We're not going to touch the title because everyone knows that 1 means 1. So we're just going to leave that so we don't cause anyone to get upset. And we're going to leave a clean date. So my recommendation is pass out HB 2802 with technical amendments to correct typographical errors. Questions or concerns, members? If not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on House Bill 2802 with amendments, Chair and Vice Chair vote aye. Representative Evelyn? Aye. Representative Ganadin excused. Representative Holt? Aye. Representative Ichiyama? Aye. Representative Ilagan excused. Representative Kong.
Aye.
Representative Miyake.
Aye.
Representative Souza.
Aye.
Representative Ganadin.
Aye.
Chair, your recommendations have been adopted.
Thank you very much. Next, we have House Bill 2435 relating to licensing. I recommend we move this out with technical amendments and defect the effective date to the year 3000. Questions or concerns, members? If not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on House Bill 2435 with amendments, noting the absence of Representative Iligan. Any members voting with reservations or no? Seeing none, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. House Bill 2692, I recommend we move this out with amendments, defect the effective date to the year 3000. And I think on page 6, line 2, the reference should be chapter 92, not 91. So I'd like to make that change as well. So recommendation HB 2692 pass with amendments. Questions or concerns, members? Representative Ganadin.
With respect to you, Chair, and the changes to the bill, I'm going to be voting no in light of the testimony that we received today. Also, brief disclosure, I represented several individuals who were charged with petty misdemeanors for their protesting on Mauna Kea in 2019. I was actually there when the officers arrived, and I saw people willing to put their bodies on the line in protection of the mountain, something I'll never forget. For those reasons, I'm going to be voting no.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Representative Souza.
I will also be voting no on this measure, and just also a disclosure that my brother is an OHA trustee, and I know that OHA gave testimony in opposition, so just putting that on the record. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Other questions or concerns, members? If not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on House Bill 2692, noting the presence of all members and the no votes of Representatives Ganadin and Souza. Any other reservations or noes? No. Representative Holt, no. Any other reservations or noes? Seeing none, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Next measure, House Bill 1527. I recommend we move this out with amendments. I'd like to take the recommended amendments from the Board of Veterinary Medicine, not all of them, but some of them. On page 5, lines 17 to 19, remove the words "when the procedure is performed by a veterinarian licensed under Chapter 471. On page 4, lines 8 and 9, I want to modify that so that it is consistent with the current maximum fine and length of imprisonment in Chapter 706. On page 4, lines 17 and 20, 17 to 20, I want to remove those lines as suggested by the Board of Veterinary Medicine. I also want to note that, I also want to make some technical amendments and defect the effective date to year 3000. On the, also from the testimony from the Animal Welfare Institute, page 2, lines 6 to 8. I'm going to take their recommendation to strike the owner and the owner's employees shall not, and amend it to read, no person not licensed under HRS 471 shall perform any surgical procedure on a pet animal, including but not limited to. And then we will correct the spelling of onychectomy on line 14 on that same page. Those are my recommendations. Questions or concerns, members? If not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on House Bill 1527 with amendments. Any reservations or noes? Your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Next measure, House Bill 1580. I recommend we move this out with amendments, the technical amendments. I'd like to adopt the Hawaiian Humane Society amendments, defect the effective date to year 3000. Questions or concerns, members? If not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on House Bill 1580 with amendments. Any reservations or noes? Reservations for Representative Ganadin. Any others?
Reservations.
Reservations for Representative Souza.
Thank you.
Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. On the next measure, House Bill 1682, the way I'm reading this, I think that pet stores who keep records should be able to comply with this without undue burden. I do recommend that we amend the bill. I'd like to adopt the Attorney General's testimony, the amendments suggested in the Attorney General's testimony, and also like to delete subsection G. And I want to continue this measure for further discussion and defect the effective date to the year 3000. Questions or concerns, member? If not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on House Bill 1682 with amendments. Any reservations or noes? Your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Next measure, House Bill 1980, relating to animal cruelty. I'd like to move this out with amendments. I recommend we pass it out with technical amendments, defect the effective date to year 3000. I'd like to adopt the Attorney General's amendments and the Kauai prosecutor's amendments. And also to clarify that if there's conflict between the offense of cruelty to animal by fighting birds in the first degree, Class C felony, and the offense of cruelty to animals in the second degree, that the new offense shall apply. And referencing 711-1109.3, subparagraph 5. Those are my recommendations. Questions or concerns, members? If not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on House Bill 1980 with amendments. Any reservations or noes? Your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Next measure, House Bill 1689. Out of deference to the Department of Land and Natural Resources, Aquatics Division, and the work that they've done to come out with the current rules, which just were approved only months ago. I know not everyone's happy with those, but that was a big stride to get that done. With due respect to the scientific community who's pushing them to do even more, and the conservation community that wants to do even more, I say we need to work with the Department of Land and Natural Resources to continue moving and use data to do good rulemaking and manage fisheries. Rather than the legislature coming in and saying what should be done, I want this based on good science and true resource management by the agency. And so my recommendation is to defer this measure. Questions or concerns, members? Representative Ganadin.
We might have to return to this, Chair. I respect your decision to defer. I think I prefer a law instead of rule. So hopefully we can still save the ooh with rules of the DLNR.
Thank you. I look forward to hearing from DLNR how effective the rules are, because that's what it comes down to. They got to gather data. Thank you. I appreciate those concerns. Other questions or concerns, members? If not, Vice Chair for the vote.
You deferred.
Yeah, we're not voting on it. Defer. House Bill 1541 relating to Suicide Prevention and Awareness Month. I'd like to move this out as is. It's got a clean date. I got permission to do that. Questions or concerns, members? If not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on House Bill 1541, passing as is. Any reservations or noes? Recommendations adopted.
Thank you. House Bill 2447 relating to parking for disabled persons. I'd like to move this out with technical amendments and defect the effective date to the year 3000. Questions or concerns, members? If not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on House Bill 2447 with amendments. Reservations or noes? Your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. House Bill 2531 relating to workplace safety. This is a difficult bill. I see it's a related bill, if not a companion, then a very similar bill in the Senate, Senate Bill 2569. I'm going to recommend that we wait for that bill to come over. They're working on it to make some amendments, because I think this has got some issues with it. So my recommendation on this measure is to defer it. Any questions or concerns, members? If not, let's move on. House Bill 1664 relating to public corruption. My recommendation is to pass this with amendments. I'd like to adopt the recommended amendments by the Attorney General and defect the effective date to year 3000. And I'd also like to change the severability clause to a savings clause. I'm told that that is actually more appropriate. That's my recommendation, HB 1664 with amendments. Questions or concerns, members? Representative Ganadin?
With respect to you, Chair, I'm going to be voting with reservations. I think if you're stupid enough to bribe a public official or stupid enough to actually get bribed, recent history is teaching us that it's most likely the federal government that's going to be prosecuting you. So for those reasons, I think that it's not going to be local police departments and Office of the Attorney General doing it, because the people who do these kinds of offenses, they're pretty well connected. So we wait until the feds get in, and it takes a long time. So for those reasons, reservations.
Understood.
I'm
Thank
voting
you.
with reservations as well. Thank you.
Sure, thank you. Any other questions or concerns, members? If not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on House Bill 1664 with amendments, noting the reservations of Representatives Ganadin and Souza. Any other reservations or noes? Your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Did I recommend the effective date? House Bill 1884 relating to standards of conduct. I recommend we move this out with amendments and defect the effective date to the year 3000. Questions or concerns, members? If not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on House Bill 1884 with amendments. Any reservations or noes? Recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Final bill, House Bill 2365 relating to transit-oriented development planning. I recommend we move this out with amendments, defect the effective date to the year 3000. Questions or concerns, members? If not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on House Bill 2365 with amendments. Reservations or noes? Your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. There being no further business before this committee, we are adjourned.